I now started thinking about myself and getting hit. And when I thought about that, when I had Axel and now I'm like, holy shit, I was hit. And I look down and I can see this big hole in my, my uniform shirt. My stomach sank. Like, I don't know. I was like, holy fuck, am I dying? Like, how bad am I hurt? I wasn't feeling anything really. And I've heard of horror stories of guys getting shot and they don't even know that they're shot, but like, you know, you can still die. And so so then I'm thinking the worst. So I start ripping my uniform off. My vest is shredded. Action.
Kyle Shoberg, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
So the thing I wanted to ask you to start out, because I was thinking about this, and actually the minutes before when I was setting up for the pod, I wanted to know what your opinion of cops was before you became a cop, because being a police officer is one of those jobs where everyone has an opinion on it, regardless if they have any experience with it or not. Like, take any other job, like nuclear scientist. If you ask a random person what's your opinion on that, there's a good chance they'll be like, I don't fucking know, like, never done it. But if you ask 10 people, what do you think of cops? 8 will probably have like a very strong opinion on cops. So I wanted to ask you, what was your opinion on being a police officer before you ever even thought about joining the force?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've actually never been asked that before. Honestly, so I started at a young age. I started at 20 years old. So I was super young, pretty fresh out of high school when I started the career. And I didn't even want to be a cop, to be honest. I wanted to be a paramedic. So I got my EMT license and worked on an ambulance. And then that just really wasn't for me. So when I was a kid growing up, my uncle, who I'm close with, he was a police officer in the town that I grew up in. So, he would come by my mom's house and, I'd see him in uniform, and it was always kind of intimidating, but kind of being around in that culture with him, doing a couple ride-alongs in high school. And then that was my senior project. So I did a lot of ride-alongs. I kind of looked up to him like a hero. I thought it was super cool.
Yeah.
The whole uniform, the cop car, being in the car, like listening to the radio traffic. I always just was pretty intrigued by that. And I don't know. I think I kind of looked at it like the ultimate. I thought it was just like such a cool experience.
Do you have a standout memory of one of those ride-alongs that you went on when you were younger? Like, anything that comes to mind?
Other than I think the first time probably watching, my uncle arrest somebody and like we're taking this person to jail, and growing up watching Cops, it was like I was living in it for real. And I kind of felt like I was on an episode of Cops. And honestly, like I remember thinking to myself, like, holy crap, like this is pretty cool. Like this is the real deal, like real life, it's not just TV. And seeing how cops kind of treated each other, how they interacted with each other at the station, wasn't anything that I thought cops were, so I guess more just like normal dudes. And on TV and on TV shows or whatever, they're always so either robotic or, kind of hide that human emotion. And so I got to actually see that behind the scenes and just see that they were just normal dudes like you and me.
I don't know about that. Being a cop is a fucking wild job. I don't know if I would consider myself the type of human being that would be able to do that or want to do that. Because if you think about the actual job of being a police officer, but you're not allowed to say you're a police officer, you just have to describe your job. And like aliens came down to Earth or something, and they're like, "What do you do?" And you say, "I walk around." And, walk around or drive around. And then if I see someone doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, I go up to them and I approach them and I try to get them not to do the thing that they're not supposed to be doing. And if they don't agree to that, or the altercation, like super simplified version of it, then you have to use force to get them to comply in some way or be able to handle the situation. And anything can happen. There's a million different options in that scenario. So if you just think about like what being a cop is from the average person's standpoint, like from me just seeing it on TV or with my interactions with cops, it's a pretty fucking Wild West job. Like there's not many jobs that beat it in terms of like the freedom to roam around and interactions with people on a daily basis.
Dude, you nailed it on the head. And honestly, for so long, we've honestly done such a poor job of really sharing the life of a police officer. And you're right. Like when you say, people ask you, what do you do for a living? And so many guys or girls that are police officers won't tell people that they're a police officer, like, which is crazy. And I've done that my whole life or my whole career. Like, if I'm wherever getting a haircut or whatever, the barber asks, what do you do for a living? I've lied plenty of times. Right. And now I've got to a point in doing what I'm doing outside of work is honestly, I think that's bad. Like you should be proud of what you do for work. I'm proud of what I do. I know the vast majority of police officers out there really are good people. Are there rotten eggs out there? Like for sure, but there are in any job. So, and those typically get weeded out anyways. But it is kind of sad that you do kind of feel like alienated a little bit. And it's funny. I always joke with my buddies at work, I hate going into restaurants in uniform on duty because you do walk into a restaurant or store or like wherever, and people do literally look at you like you're an alien from outer space. And that's the analogy that I always use. I'm like, why do people stare at us? Like I'm a normal dude. I just wear a different uniform to work, but I think it's our own fault, honestly. And I think kind of where we are in society, because we have kind of done a poor job of really showing the communities and people really what we do and who we really are. It's starting to come around a little bit. You're kind of seeing it on social media, YouTube channels. Some of these agencies and cops are getting pretty heavily into the TikTok thing, which I think is a little overboard.
What do you mean, like cops like dancing on TikTok? Yeah, like putting someone in handcuffs and they're like doing a dance with the handcuffs or something.
Yeah, like honestly, like I draw the line, for that, because the reality is we are public servants, number one, and we're professionals, right? So there's obviously a line that you have to draw. I draw it there, but I think you're probably seeing more and more cops putting themselves out there. I know obviously I have. And I don't see any harm in it. I think honestly, over time, it's only going to do the profession good instead of having to alienate yourself all the time. But that's kind of my opinion on it.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think from my civilian point of view, whatever you want to call it, growing up, seeing cops on TV, having one or two people that I knew who were cops, but didn't really know what was going on in their day-to-day life. Now it's much different because I'm 29 years old. I'm friends with guys who are cops, so like I hear and see like the shit talk behind the scenes in the group chats, like fucked up shit that goes on or funny shit that goes on during the day that I wasn't hearing when I was a kid that humanizes police officers.
Totally.
But I have memories when I'm a kid and I'm standing in line at a Dunkin' Donuts or something with my mom, and I'm 13 years old. And two police officers walk in and I've done nothing wrong, but all of a sudden like this jolt hits me where I'm like, I have to stand straight and not draw attention to myself. And I have to fucking just like, I can't talk to them because that'll lead to them interrogating me. And then before you know it, I'm online and with my mom at Dunkin' Donuts and I'm going to be in the back of a squad car in like 45 seconds. And like this super unrealistic view of what it is. And then gradually over time, I've kind of at least tried to break that down with the way that I view people whose jobs I know nothing about. But there's definitely that instinct with police officers to view them as this kind of cold, mechanistic operating system that's just out to, punish people, do what they need to do, and then beyond that there's no sort of warm or understanding element to their job.
No, dude, I mean, and if you really look at it, TV shows, movies, action shows involving cops, like it's all the same narrative on how our behavior is. And then if you think about in real life how we have done such a poor job of showing people that that's not all what we do, that's a small percentage, then you're only going to go off of what you know. And that's, that we're all super stoic and, serious all the time and very robotic. And that honestly, like, that's not who we are. And But like I said, I mean, we've done a poor job of educating people really. And so that's, what else do you have to go off of?
Well, how do you, besides TikTok, like how do you show people what it's like to be a cop on a daily basis? Like I know you've obviously you have the Shots Fired podcast, you post videos, like these very detailed breakdowns of case uses, like Uvalde, like watch that video, like an hour and 20 minutes on what happened there. Like the Shots Fired podcast channel has some very interesting breakdowns, and people should definitely go check it out. But like before you even get to that point where you start a podcast, like what are some of the things that you have tried to do, maybe they were unsuccessful, or like just to kind of like show people what being a cop is actually like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think it's simple. I think you just drop that wall down and you go out there when you're on patrol or whatever it is your job assignment is, and you just be yourself. You know, like I'm a pretty outgoing guy. I like to interact with people on a social level. And so, you know, it took me a while to get there to figure out like, okay, I don't have to be a freaking robot at work. You know, I would find that just interacting with like even pretty hardened criminals at a prison, you just chat with them like you and I are chatting right now. Dude, it goes so far with them. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had, you know, parolees and gangsters and all these like pretty hard people, appreciate when cops treat and talk to them like that. I mean, okay, so like even if they commit a crime and it's time to go to jail, hey man, like you fucked up, like you're going to jail. And you know what? Most of them own up to it. But honestly, to answer the question, I think it's just being vulnerable, showing people that like I can have a normal conversation with you, just like I said, like we're talking right now. And I think it kind of opens people's eyes a little bit. And I've had a lot of people, you know, just interacting with, you know, citizens normally. They're like, man, I've never like interacted with a cop like that before. So I think it just comes down to that, man. I think it's just be vulnerable, take the wall down, be a normal dude or a girl, and be social with people. You know, you don't have to be the robot.
Yeah, that could be an entire like reality series or a podcast in itself. Like the conversations that happen between cops and suspects or cops and criminals after the handcuffs go on. Like you're sitting in the back of the car. You don't just teleport to the precinct. Like you arrest a dude and he's sitting in your car. And I'm sure there are conversations where you're just like, so what's up? Like we have 30 minutes, you know, just sitting here, you know, either joking around, being serious. Like you have to pick something to say. So in those moments, it would be really interesting to be a fly on the wall, just like the conversations when the reality is setting in, where someone's like, all right, fuck it, I'm arrested. Like it is what it is. And then they're just willing to talk about it.
Yeah, man, I've had some interesting conversations with some people, and on, you know, a lot of these guys, even women, you know, I mean, I've arrested some legit dudes, and you know, tattoos head to toe. I mean, badasses out on the street, and then you get them in the back of the car and you're driving to the jail, and they'll break down crying. And, you know, they don't want to go back to jail, and they try, but you know, a lot of times drugs, alcohol, addiction, and all those things drive them back to their culture. But yeah, I've had a lot of interesting conversations for sure. You know, I've had a lot of heart-to-heart conversations with some of these guys. You know, the older I get, the kind of easier it is for me. You know, I'm 36 now. I've got 16 years on the job. And, hey, man, there's some times when I'm just like, dude, you're too fucking old for this. Like, what are you doing out here? You know, you're out here getting arrested for drugs or, you know, stupid shit, stealing, whatever. And they're older, you know, been in and out of prison their whole life. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, get your shit together. You have kids. Like, you know, it's the middle of the night. Why are you out here right now doing illegal shit when you should be at home? To be honest, man, like sometimes that resonates with some of these people, and they get it. And sometimes it clicks, you know, for some, and some it doesn't. But yeah, it's interesting. You get to see a whole different perspective of life doing this job and going into these people's homes. You know, sometimes their homes are their cars, right? Or the streets. And you have to respect that. But you get to see a whole new walk of life for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, having heart-to-hearts with people and guys breaking down or guys or girls breaking down, being vulnerable. in those moments, because part of the job description of a cop, you could argue, probably the biggest description is holding people accountable for their actions when they've crossed the line. But implicit to holding people accountable is that you expect more from that person. So I imagine there are a lot of people that get arrested that have never had anyone say to them, you don't have to be doing this. Like, what the fuck are you doing with your, like you don't have to, there's so much more shit you could be doing. Whatever, you're 35 years old, you don't have to be out here. And that, for a lot of those guys or girls, I imagine those are some of the few moments in their lives where someone's told them that you can be more than the things you've been arrested for. You can be more than what all your friends are doing, shit like that.
Yeah, dude, I've had people write me letters. I just actually, no shit, like 2 weeks ago, got a card delivered to me at the police department through the mail. And it was, I opened it, and it was for somebody that I arrested like a week prior, and thanking me. It's like, okay, it's a little, right, kind of strange. That doesn't happen all the time, but every once in a while you do get that where, people appreciate you taking them to jail, because now they're being forced to basically be held accountable, right? Like either go to a drug treatment program or an alcohol treatment program, or if it's domestic violence or whatever, they're being forced to get some type of help. And so, sometimes they appreciate that. Something that has always stuck with me is I remember one time taking this one guy to jail, and this guy was tattooed literally head to toe all over his face. Like, he's in and out of prison his whole life. And we were en route to the jail, and he's crying, the dude's broke down crying. And we had a conversation, and then we pull up in the Sally Port of the jail, and he's like, I got to stop crying, because he knew that as soon as he walked through those doors in the jail, he had some clout. And so he's not going to walk in there with tears rolling down his face. Oh, He asked me to give him like 5 minutes so it didn't look like he was crying. And so I let him wipe his tears off, whatever, talk to him, let him kind of cool off a little bit. And I respected that I knew the world that he was going in, completely different world that you and I live in. But I respected it, gave him a little bit of time, and took him into the jail. And you wouldn't know any different that he was crying. You would think that this dude was a badass and nobody would fuck with him in jail, but kind of interesting.
Yeah. I can only imagine what it's like in those moments before you walk into jail. And the thank you card is wild. I would have never, I would imagine that there are calls, or, maybe you see a guy in the street that you arrested a few years back or whenever, but for someone to sit down and write a thank you card,
I know, right? It's like, yeah, okay.
You should make shots fired thank you cards, and then when you arrest someone, you give it to them and be like, I know you don't feel like filling this out now, but in like 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes, 5 years, you're gonna wanna fill this out and maybe send it to me.
Yeah, dude, that'd be funny, but hey, some people like, that's just their lifestyle, dude. Like they don't give a shit. Like, they're in and out of jail. Like, they don't care. Some people would rather be in jail, but it's just a different world.
Does that happen with a lot of people that you've arrested? Like, the kind of indifference to what's going on, it's just like par for the course?
Yeah. Honestly, all the time. Yeah.
What does that feel like to does it, because I would imagine if I'm doing a job and the status quo is kind of like, you're arresting a lot of the same people, if it's not the same exact person, the same archetypes, like doing the same shit, does that make you feel helpless in a way? Does it make you feel like, what's the point if these guys are just gonna get out and do the same thing again? Like, how do you feel in those moments where people are kind of indifferent to the gravity of the situation?
Yeah, I can. I think you do get to a point sometimes where you're like, throw your hands up and you're like, dude, what are we even doing? Right. So, especially if we're out here in California, it's like the laws are a little wacky out here, and they're getting pushed further and further to the limits of like no accountability for these people. And dude, honestly, I'm a supervisor, and I just got to tell myself and tell the people that work, for me on my patrol team is like, look, whatever happens after we do our job and take someone to jail, that's not our job after that. And albeit a lot of these people are in and out of the system, you know, I mean, you book them in jail. Sometimes these people are getting kicked out the back door by the time you even leave the jail. Right. And I think you just have to tell yourself, like, that's not my job. And my job is to take care of whatever is going on at hand. And then whatever happens after that, it is what it is, right? That's out of my hands. That's up to a judge, a district attorney, you know, that's the legal system. Mm-hmm. So, is it frustrating? Yeah. And you are seeing a lot of violence has gone up quite significantly. You know, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Like, turn the news on and it's everywhere. But in particular, I think violence towards cops have gone up. And I think a big part of that is just these people are not being held accountable, and they're being let out of prison because they're deemed as nonviolent. You know, I mean, so that to me is the frustrating part, is the violence against people and the violence against cops. You know, I mean, some of these victims out there, they don't deserve that. Some of these people should be locked up and not be let out of jail, and they are. So that's kind of the problem that I have.
Does that have to do, like, what are some of the wackier laws in California? Does it have to do with that whole situation, like, you know, pandemic, quick written in laws recently, or is it kind of been an overarching theme since you've been on the force? No,
I think it was already headed that direction, you know, with, you know, our California is a very, you know, democratic state, and our governor is you know, one of his ways of saving money is to shut down some of our prisons. And, you know, I don't really think believing in the prison system. So, like, letting some of these offenders out if they're deemed nonviolent. Well, the problem is what these people are being released on is what they were recently arrested on. But if you arrest someone on a drug charge, you know, that would be obviously considered a nonviolent charge. But you look at these people's arrest history, and most of them have been arrested and charged and prosecuted for pretty violent crimes. So that's not really being taken into account. So they're just being flooded out into society. I mean, no housing for them. You know, most of them are going right back to living the same lifestyle that they were living before. They're victimizing people, you know, so then you throw COVID on top of that, and it just, I really think amplified it, because when COVID was happening, jails were kicking even more people out, you know, because they didn't want to spread COVID within the facilities. And then as far as booking people, I mean, dude, it was so restrictive. Like, you damn near had to kill somebody to just get them booked in jail during the pandemic. It was so challenging. And I mean, dude, there were nights when, like, legitimately we would arrest somebody and the jail would refuse to take them. And now we're, like, scratching our heads, like, what do we do with this person? And you're literally giving them a ticket. You're giving them a ticket for a pretty significant crime that otherwise they would have went to jail, and you're sending them on their way. It's just crazy.
So the prior offenses in the state of California, they only take into account the current charge that you're in jail for whether you're nonviolent or a violent person. So you could, like, if I was in jail in California on a drug charge, but I murdered, you know, a person when I was 18 and like served time for it, and I'm out, and then I got a drug charge and went in separately, like, I would be considered a nonviolent person in jail.
Yeah, it's whatever sentence you're serving out for that crime or for those charges.
That's crazy. That's like
So not a lot of thought went into it, I don't think, is the bottom line.
Yeah. But, I mean, you would think, like, the process and the decision making behind a law that would affect thousands of people in jail, and then millions of people either in jail or outside of jail who are coming into contact with people, you'd think that people would get in a room and throw an idea against the wall and be like, all right, this is what I'm thinking. We only consider people nonviolent or violent based on their most recent charge. And immediately someone would be in the room standing up and say, yeah, what if they murdered someone 10 years prior, or they, you know, jacked a car, beat the shit out of someone
I know.
And it's not their most recent charge. Do you think we should probably consider them violent too? Like it just boggles my mind some of the things that have gone through recently, and like I'm obviously no expert at law. I'm just reading things as the average person on the news or listening to podcasts, things like that. But it just makes me question the amount of thought and the level of caring that people have at the highest level of the democratic process and the legal process, and when a law can go on the books like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. Like we all think the same, right? But yeah, I get it is what it is, I guess. I mean, it's the law. That's what's been passed, and now we're kind of left to deal with it. And I think you're seeing the ramifications of that nationwide.
So in those situations where you have booked someone and you bring them to jail and the jail says we're not taking them, what do you actually do with that person? Like, do you get them a motel room? Like what happened? You're just wait here. Like, we'll trust you not to leave until another spot opens up.
No, dude. So generally you'll give them a citation, a written promise to appear. So they have to appear in court later on those charges, and you just kick them out the front door. Say, see you later. That's usually what happens.
Damn.
Yeah.
So to go back to what we were talking about in the beginning of the conversation with the cops portrayed in the media, I saw that you had said that the first Bad Boys film was actually one of your primary inspirations for wanting to become a cop. And I love that. I love the whole the last movie I thought was okay. The first two Bad Boys were unbelievable.
Yeah.
But obviously I watched Bad Boys and I didn't become a cop, even though, I'm like seeing the explosions. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like Will Smith, fucking pull. I don't know what gun that is. Fucking Magnum 357, whatever. Just like a big ass gun, like holding it to the side, the double barrels, like in that scene where, I think it's the first Bad Boys where he's like, his back's against the wall and he's just like shooting people double barreled. What was it about the Bad Boys movie, the first Bad Boys or the franchise in general, that awoke something in you to actually consider being a police officer as a career?
Dude, I think the adrenaline and just like the different things that you get to do and see like every day, and then you throw like, like you watch a movie like that as like a young kid, you're like, holy shit, like who doesn't want to do that? Obviously that's nothing like reality, but yeah, I think for me personally, I love the adrenaline of it. It's you get that high, and it's like you're always kind of chasing that next high, right, of adrenaline. Now it's not meant for everybody, and there's a lot of cops out there who are like, that's not for me. I'll go this direction in my career, and you have to have people like that. I mean, you can't have the freaking Will Smiths as police officers. Not everybody can be like that. I feel like
you can only have one of those guys per department.
Yeah, dude.
Just an absolute wild card.
Yeah, for sure. That might even be a stretch. But so that was just kind of the direction I wanted to go. I don't know. I was like, man, that's fucking pretty cool, And next thing you know, it was like living it. So
do you ever, when you've been cleaning a gun or you've had two guns on you for whatever reason, have you ever just like leaned back against the wall and like fucking just like went like
never
this?
Never. Maybe at the
just
range,
like pretend like they're two guys. They pretend like they're two guys like coming out both doorways and just fucking.
I think if I did that, I'd get slapped in the face and then fired. Yeah, I'm not willing to risk my job for any reenactments, but yeah.
No. So I mean, if you did devolve into a TikTok cop, that's definitely like a good side-by-side reality.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think I could ever get there.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of some respect for myself.
Yeah. I think the airport chase scene in the first one comes to mind too, where Martin Lawrence is driving the Porsche.
Yeah.
Will Smith is the passenger, and there's only like that one alleyway, or not alleyway, but like the little gap to go through. So based on that scene, and also if you've been in high speed chases, I'm not sure if you have been in high speed suspect, if you look at the Bad Boys scene and even cop movies in general, where they have like the high speed, like the chatter in the car, like people freaking out versus like going opposite lanes and shit like that, how accurate do you think some of those scenes are, and what are like the most realistic things about those cop chase scenes, and what are some of the things that don't actually happen?
So, dude, pretty realistic, honestly. Like if you're not by yourself and you're with a partner, I mean, you are having conversations with each other. I mean, your buddy's looking out for traffic, and you know, I've been the passenger in a high speed chase, and it's scary, dude. You're not in control of the driving, right? So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of funny banter. You know, I think one movie that really captures it best, I would say, is End of Watch. I mean, the movie starts out with that car chase scene, and you know,
that's Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah, and they're having that conversation with each other during the chase, and I'm like, dude, that's like totally realistic. I mean, that really does happen.
Do you have a preset idea or a preset role of who is going to be the driver should you get into a high-speed chase, or is it just like whoever gets back to the car first is the one driving the car? Because you said you were the passenger.
Yeah, you know, most of the time we roll around solo, and being a supervisor, I'm always solo now. But there were times when you would double up, and it came down to whoever wanted to drive. And for me, I always wanted to drive because I get car sick in the passenger seat, so that was a no-go. And then secondly, if we were going to get into a car chase or something, I do like to be in control. I don't want to feel helpless in the passenger seat. But mainly, honestly, man, I get car sick, so I call dibs on driving.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine, like, I'm trying to think of if I'd rather drive or be the passenger. If I'm driving, obviously it's all on me, the performance, whether it goes right or wrong, if you catch the dude. And if you're in the passenger seat, there's a little bit helpless. Of an out. Yeah, but you are helpless. That's the thing. Like, does the adrenaline of being the passenger freak you out more? And I'm like talking to myself, or like the anxiety of being helpless in that moment. And it's just like, all right, if my partner kills me, like he kills me, whatever, I trust him. It's a tough call to make.
Yeah. And as a passenger, you're the one operating the radio, you're giving directions. So like, you're busy doing stuff too. The driver's, focused on driving. Your job is to call out street names, where you're going, and all those things. So both have a role to play.
Yeah. What was the first moment where you felt drawn to becoming a police officer? Like, if it was on the ride-alongs that you mentioned, if it was the movies, like cinematic experience, like what was the first stretch of your life where you remember feeling compelled to actually fill out the paperwork, like go to the recruiting office and become a police officer?
Gosh, probably doing my ride-alongs. I think, kind of like I said, living that whole cops, after watching it all the time as a young kid, and then kind of like being there in the moment. I think that's when it kind of clicked for me, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do this. And then you start doing the job, and you start getting involved in certain situations, like very high stress situations, and I think that really dictates whether or not this job is for you or not. And for some, it's not. And unfortunately, people find that out in the wrong moments. But for me, I kind of thrived on that a little bit. And yeah, it was so honestly, man, I think it was just like a combination of everything. It was like, I really want to do this. I think it would be cool. And then I'm doing it. And then I get involved in stuff, and I'm like, yeah, this is really cool. And I enjoy it. So
yeah, like it was a buildup of the ride-alongs,
it's like a
pop culture. You're just like your natural internal inclination for feeling fulfilled, wanting to find a purpose. Everything came together and kind of drew you towards that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've got buddies. Excuse me. I've got buddies that we're in special forces in the military, and I know these are two completely different types and styles of jobs. But when you talk about like that question in and of itself, like if you ask the special forces guy that question, I think you get the same answer. It's like, yeah, I dreamed of doing it as a kid, and then you build up to it to get to that point, and then you start doing it, and it's like, holy shit, this is the best thing ever. I think unanimously, you're probably always going to get that answer from those guys.
And you've said you've been doing it for 16 years?
Yeah, 16 years.
And you're 36, you said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I started when I was 20, super young.
Holy shit.
Yeah, like you're way too young. Like no 20-year-old should be a cop. I started in a small town though, so probably, I mean, I still don't think I should have been a cop. I did a good job, and I always felt like I had something to prove. So I felt like I always did a good job. But
so you were a full blown cop at 20 years old, or you joined the academy at 20?
No, man, I was full blown cop by myself in a patrol car. Like
God damn, dude.
Yeah, going to like family domestic violence calls, and here I am, like 20, fucking living at my parents' house, and I'm trying to like tell adults with kids how to live their life. It was so out of place. It was weird.
Jesus Christ. I'm trying to think. So I was 20, when I was 20 years old, I was a junior in college, still playing baseball. Like, what were the most violent or stressful situations I was in at that point in my life? Probably like a bar fight.
Yeah, I was going to say probably being at a bar or something.
Like once that lasted for 30 seconds. And other than that, I can't speak for all 20-year-olds, but for me, you think in the moment college is a very stressful experience, and then you enter the real world and you find out that college is, less than 1% of all the different possibilities of stresses that you can encounter. And I'm still a dumb piece of shit because I'm 29 years old, so it's not like I'm not that much smarter. I'm like slightly less dumb than I was a few years ago, and then slightly less dumb a few years before that. But like, what did you feel like the first week on the job? You're 20 years old, you're full blown cop. Not to use like AIDS terminology, like full blown AIDS. Like you caught being a cop. You were diagnosed with a disease at 20 years old. Like, what does that feel like the first week, just having that power and responsibility?
Dude, honestly, like looking back, I don't even think I realized the power and authority that I even had at that time, at that age. I really didn't. Like, I think I just would show up to work thinking I was fucking super cool. Throw on the badge, your duty belt with your gun. And I think probably back then I just felt like invincible. Like nothing's ever going to happen to me. And you really don't appreciate or have an understanding of like, seriously, the authority and how you have the utmost authority to alter and change somebody's life, even take somebody's life. Like that didn't even click with me, I don't think, until later in my career.
Did you ever have any encounters where you pulled someone over or you stopped someone in the street and they just didn't believe you or they didn't take you seriously?
Yeah, dude.
Because like you're 36, but you could probably pass for 30. Honestly, like you have a young complexion. Yeah. You ever have anyone that's just like, it's not fucking Halloween, like get that costume off?
So there is a funny story. I pulled this lady over. It was like snowing where I was working, and she's like causing a major traffic hazard. Some old lady, and I pull her over, and I walk up to her window, and she was not having it. She was like, didn't even believe that I was a cop because I looked so young. And then she's like, "Does your mother even know you're out this late?" And I'm like, "Damn it," Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Does that gun have real bullets? Is that a toy gun?
No, she wasn't. She was not having it. Like, she like started to drive away. I mean, honestly, I don't even think she believed I was a cop. It was like, okay. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, for sure, I would run into that. I mean, people, I guess, would probably respect what I did for work, but I mean, let's be real. Like, I looked like I was probably 15 years old. I don't think there was a whole lot of respect there, and in fact, there were guys in my academy class that they didn't like me. I mean, they let me know, like, they did not like me because they felt like I was too young to be a cop, and they had zero respect for me. So I had to battle that too. Like in my academy, just some of the recruits in the class just flat out not liking me.
What were most other guys in the academy or girls? What age were they?
Typically the age, like 24 would be on the younger side.
Okay.
You know, like one guy in my class was 40, the oldest. So, I mean, anything in between that, you know, mid to late 20s is pretty typical.
Okay. So not, I guess probably because you looked young, you were catching more shit, but 20 versus 24 is not really that big of a difference when you think about
not
it.
In terms of like maturity and stuff, probably not. But like I had just turned 20, so I was like fresh off being 19. So, and I looked like I was freaking 12.
Yeah. So you could, did you ever pull someone over for driving drunk before you were 21?
All the time, dude. All the time. I got a lot of DUIs when I wasn't even 21.
That's crazy. Like you can't even drink legally yet, and you can pull someone over for a DUI.
Yeah, that's crazy, wild. Right? Yeah.
So what is the academy like? How long is it? What's like the day-to-day like? Just kind of tell me the story of you going through the police academy.
Yeah, I want to say here in California, it's different everywhere, but here in California, I want to say it was like 24 weeks. So it was around 6 months, and your days, you know, obviously they, you know, it's very, you know, paramilitary. So they would, all academies are different, but the one I went to was very paramilitary and, you know, very, very strict. And your general day would start out early in the morning and do PT. And then from PT, you would just do a shit ton of class time. I mean, a lot of classroom time, listening to different instructors, teaching different law topics. And then towards like the end of the academy, you know, you're feeling pretty drained. Honestly, you're feeling like this is my job and it fucking sucks. Like I hated it. You're constantly taking tests. If you fail the test, you get kicked out. So there's a lot of stress with that. And then more like towards the tail end of it, they start throwing in the scenarios, and you get tested on doing certain scenarios, and you have to pass all of them, or again, you get kicked out. So just a lot of stress, and a lot of PT and class time. I mean, really, that's, I guess, the best way to sum it up.
How tough is the physical fitness test for being a cop in the academy?
I mean, honestly, I think it depends who you ask that question. You know, like I think it's easy, but I also feel like I'm in shape. I go to the gym, and I've always lived that lifestyle. So you ask someone who's completely out of shape, they can't even climb a 5-foot wall, which is like the minimum requirement, or a 6-foot wall. You know, so probably depends who you ask, but it's not hard.
Yeah. I only ask because like there are overweight people who can track me down and kick my ass. Like I've been doing Muay Thai for a few years, and there are people that are, you know, other people would probably say they're 20, 30 pounds overweight, but they're still agile. They're still, their cardio is decent. But there's some cops that I see walking around Brooklyn or New York City. I live in Brooklyn, and I'm just like, if something went down on the subway and someone had to run up some stairs, like I just don't see that person chasing them down. I'm just like, there's no way. Like I'm just looking at them. I'm like, in what world can you apprehend someone who's jogging moderately?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, dude, in this job, like not every department has standards like that, physical standards. And, you know, for people that even, especially for people in this job where like your life depends on your level of fitness, sometimes like it could depend on how fit you are. Should you get into some type of fight or altercation, someone's trying to kill you, you know, like honestly, I don't have time or appreciation for cops that have little to no standard for themselves. I mean, I don't know. They're not going to be doing anything for you. I can probably promise you that. And they're probably there to collect a paycheck, but other than that, that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Your physical fitness, your cardio strength can literally be the difference between
100%,
life and death.
Dude.
And I'm lucky. Yeah. I've never been in a situation that's been that life threatening, where the possibility in an altercation was most likely death, like a 50% chance of death. I've never been in something that high, but I'm sure that you've been in, you know, multiple situations where had you not been as in good shape, or had things been a little bit different, you were a little bit slower, you would not be talking here, or, you would be in a different physical state from an injury or something like that.
Oh yeah. In this job, like it's almost unavoidable getting into some type of either physical altercation. I mean, I've been in several officer involved shootings, and yeah, being in that type of condition, I like personally, I think it could be life or death for you. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I guess you could set the standard, but, you can't force people to, to be like that. I mean, they either want to or they don't.
So most of the fitness requirements or extracurricular fitness, like strength training, martial arts, anything that an officer chooses to do, that would be on them to complete. There's nothing that says you have to, once you pass the academy, there's nothing that is like continuing, you gotta be in tip top shape.
No, there's not that, but there is a standard, and I can only speak on behalf of California, but in California, there is a standard when it comes to, use of force and control holds, and, we call it defensive tactics. Mm-hmm. So there is that standard, and every department has to meet that standard, meaning provide a certain amount of hours of training every year, which it's not a lot to meet that standard. Anything outside of that is on you. So, California actually sets the bar for standard across the nation for police training. I mean, we do what a lot of people, talk a lot of shit about our state, but the reality is California does set the bar for having a high standard in police training. And even that's low. So anything outside of that, man, it's on you. And that's why you see the people that you're describing, like some states it's fucking really low, and that's on you. So you get a lot of guys that do, jiu-jitsu right now is like a pretty hot topic for cops, ground fighting and things like that. But, like I tell any cop, especially on my podcast, it's like, dude, if you want to be an expert at something, like, don't ever rely on the department to make you an expert. You're going to have to go do that on your own. And unfortunately, like, you're in a job where your life could depend on that. So it's on you, whatever your standard is personally, like, they're not going to make you great. You have to make yourself great. So you got to go out and get it yourself, whether that's go to training. You might have to spend your own money going to training, get your own gym membership, sign up for a jiu-jitsu gym, or Muay Thai or whatever. But I mean, dude, the reality is, like, it's on you. So you can't expect agencies to provide you for that, because they're not going to, because they don't have to.
Do you practice any martial arts, or have you practiced in the past?
I did. I wrestled for a long time, all through middle school, high school. I did wrestling, freestyle and collegiate, and that has definitely benefited me for sure. A lot of my buddies do jiu-jitsu. I haven't done it in a long time, so I can't say that I do it now, but I am comfortable enough, I think, in my wrestling skills that when I have had to do some type of ground fighting at work, I always end up reverting back to what I knew in wrestling, which is tended to help me out. But that's about it for now. And then I just, stay active in the gym.
Yeah, I would imagine that having those reps in a jiu-jitsu class, I've only done a few classes in jiu-jitsu, but I've done Muay Thai regularly, and just like being able to breathe normally in a situation outside the gym where, maybe someone's getting in my face, or, I've never been in any sort of lethal situation where someone's threatening my life, but just like situations that have been intimidating that I've experienced after I started doing Muay Thai, I felt like I was able to kind of breathe in those moments and not be as reactionary as I would have been in the past, because I had confidence in myself to be able to, if I couldn't de-escalate it or run away, to, at least get out of it relatively unscathed. So I would imagine for you, where you're doing that more regularly, you're putting yourself in harm's way on a consistent basis, that just having the reps with something like wrestling enables you to, even if you don't get in an altercation, just to have more confidence in being able to handle it and not necessarily result to lethal force right away.
Yeah. And that's just it so imagine you finishing your reps doing Muay Thai for an hour, couple hours for a session at the gym, and feeling stressed out like that. Now amplify that times 1,000. Someone's trying to kill you, and now you have to make a good cognitive decision on saving your own life or somebody else's life. That's really hard to do, and that's hard to ask of somebody to do in the fraction of a second. Not even a second, like half a second. So you're right. I own a training business on the side, and one of the classes I teach talks about, surviving deadly encounters is the name of my class. And part of that is you're never going to just rise to the occasion in a situation like that. If you're not mentally preparing yourself for something like that, odds are you're probably going to fail. And under that amount of pressure and stress, you're going to revert back to your lowest level of training. And that's just the reality of it. So by getting yourself active in the gym, getting your heart rate up, being in stressful situations, you're going to be allowed to make, your cognitive thinking is going to be a lot better than if you don't do anything. And then, God forbid something like that happens. And I've seen it. Okay. I've been involved in stuff where that stuff has happened, and people that probably thought they were going to rise to that occasion didn't. And it affects them. So the point is you do have to condition your brain to manage stress. I mean, period. And for us in cops, I tell, especially new guys, but shit, even to this day, I do it. While you're driving around, at work and nothing's going on or whatever, like run scenarios in your head. Just constantly be running scenarios in your head. Whatever the scenario is, you choose it, but you start the scenario and you finish it. So start to finish. And you do that enough times in your head, you're getting that mental repetition. When that time comes, and believe it or not, you're gonna revert back to however you mentally trained yourself. So I mean, you can do little things like that to condition your brain. And then we do a series of stressful type training. So like stressful scenarios, like an example would be putting a hood over your head and walking you into a room, and you have no idea what's about to be in front of your face when I pull that hood off your head. And you're going to have to make a decision as fast as you possibly can when that hood comes off. So there would be a scenario staged, and you would be presented with that as soon as the hood came off, and you have to take action. Maybe it's a shooting scenario. Maybe it's a no shoot scenario. It might just be, a stale situation, and your brain has to like process it for a minute, and go, okay. And then do whatever it is you need to do. But those are just some of the things that, we train to condition your brain, like you said, to be able to manage that stress. If I pointed a gun at you right now, I mean, we're on a remote video call, and I'd still be fucking stressed out if you pointed a gun at me over video. Right. So if I pointed a gun
my heart rate would go up.
Yeah, and I said, fucking do something, like you're going to fight, flight, or freeze. Like those are the three reactionary things that your body's going to naturally do. And the worst two things to do is, the first worst thing to do is to freeze. If you have to flight, okay, get to cover or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, man, you just got to, cops are in that line of work where you have to freaking train yourself more than the average person to deal with shit like that, because you go to work every day, like with the possibility of being presented with that scenario. So
I'm not sure if you do if it's just cop training or civilian training. I want to get more deeply into some of those examples and surviving deadly encounters. But I just had a quick thought on, a common nightmare in the mass psyche is getting held up at gunpoint. You're just walking back from a restaurant, maybe with your girlfriend, you carrying your wallet, your phone, someone rolls up on you as you're calling an Uber, puts a gun in your face and says, you know, give me your shit.
Mm-hmm.
In a situation like that where you have the option of fight, flight, or freeze, what would you advise in that sort of situation? And I know it's hard without like the specific examples, but like in a typical holdup like that, is there a best action that you can take for a high chance of a non-lethal outcome?
Yeah, dude. Me personally, like, I'm giving you my shit. Like, you stick a gun in my face and ask me for. I'm not going to try to act like a tough guy. I'm not going to. Nah, like, you can have it. I don't care. Take my phone, wallet, whatever you want. I'm not fighting back in that situation. Like, I already don't have the upper hand. You know, you don't know what that person's intentions are. I mean, if the firearm's even real or not. It's just, why even chance it? Like, just give them what they asked for, and just hope that they go on their way. But
yeah,
I'm not going to try to fight that.
Yeah. So that in that situation, would that be considered freezing, or is that a flight, or what is that considered under?
I would consider that just compliance.
Compliance.
But,
okay.
You know, when you talk about freezing, like, if you and I got into a gunfight and I'm taking action against you, meaning I'm shooting at you, I'm trying to kill you, and you just freeze and you don't do anything. You don't run and try to take cover. You don't get your gun out and fire back. You literally just freeze where you're at because your brain just locked up. That's what freezing means. And that does happen to a lot of cops, unfortunately. And again, unfortunately, a lot of cops that get shot and killed out in the field, you know, I hate to say it, but I just, sometimes they weren't prepared for that. And when you have someone that's actively trying to kill you, that person's already made up their mind that's what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to either match them on their level or higher, you know, to come out victorious in a situation like that. Because here's the reality, dude. In a gunfight, there's a winner and a loser. And I don't want to be on the losing end of a gunfight, because we all know what that means. So you got to get yourself to that level. And you know what? Like I say in my classes, like, sometimes this job is just utterly fucking violent, and it is what it is. I mean, you're wearing a bulletproof vest and you have given a firearm to go to work every day. And there are people out there that want to kill you. So unfortunately, when that time comes, you know, dude, it's violent. It's gruesome. It's violent. There's nothing fun about it, but that is the reality of the job that you are taking. So, you know, you're not working at Wells Fargo, handing out cash all day or taking people's deposits, and you're starting work at 8 and you're off at 5. And you know that every day when you go into work, right? I mean, that's not that job. So people have to know that getting into this career.
Hey, what's up, guys? So Kyle and I recorded part 1 of the episode, and then we had a little bit of a technical difficulty, which is why you're about to hear me restart the conversation on part 2. We recorded part 1 and 2 on 2 separate days. So part 2 is the last 2.5 hours, and Kyle gets into the police shootings he's been involved in, some wild ass shit that he's done on the force. So stay tuned for that, and it's about to start right now. Kyle Shoberg, thank you for joining me for round 2. We got knocked down by a technical difficulty, but we did not get knocked out. We're back here.
That's right. We're pro podcasters. We're going strong. And the last time we were recording, we left off, you were talking about that transition from being in the academy for 6 months, being in the police academy, to those first few weeks out on the street. And I believe you said you were 19 when you joined the academy, and then 20 as a full-time cop or something in there. Yeah, I was, I think, just turned 20 when I started the academy, because I was 20 still when I got out. So yeah, probably.
So what was that like, your first few weeks crawling the streets as a 20-year-old, you know, with a gun, just walking around being like, this is fucking real now?
Yeah, it was, I I don't know. Like, honestly, I think the best way to describe it was I just felt, it was like kind of like surreal, I guess. I kind of felt like I was like living a TV show, you know? Like I said, I don't really think it had kind of hit me, you know? I was just trying to have fun with it, learn as much as I, you know, possibly could, get the respect of people that I worked with, the other officers, and just kind of see where I fit in, you know? So you got to go through the training program, which I think is around 4 months at my old agency, you know? So you do that, which is stressful. You're constantly under pressure and stress. And so just trying to navigate my way through it, man, just trying to figure it out.
4 months is not a lot. Like that.
No, especially for a 20-year-old.
For a 55-year-old, it took me 4 years to barely learn accounting. That was my degree in college.
I know.
And I left, and I was not a model student, but I still did, you know, a decent amount of work. And leaving college, I was like, I still have no fucking idea about this industry. I could not imagine training in something where your life is on the line if you screw up, and other people's lives are on the line, and you're doing it for 4 months. Like 4 months is crazy to have that amount of responsibility.
Yeah, you know, I think as time has gone on, I think a lot of training programs have upped their training programs, but still, I mean, I would probably go out and venture to guess most places aren't any longer than 6 months while you're with the training officer. So, I mean, it's funny. Somebody actually commented on like one of our YouTube videos we had put out the other day, and it was like they were shocked the lack of training that we get, and they were comparing us to like barbers and cosmetologists, and how their schooling is like, you know, over a year, and ours is so low, you know. And it's, I mean, they're right. Like the training is very short, and like you just said, the amount of responsibility that you have it's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I know obviously you're not responsible for the structure of the training. Whoever created the police academy training way back in the day, but if I was on an operating table and some guy was about to cut me open, and I asked the surgeon how long he'd been training heart surgeries or whatever part of my body was getting ripped apart, and he was like, I've been at it since last October, I'd be like, what the fuck, dude? I'd be like pulling wires out of me, like, get me the fuck out of here.
He's like, just go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Like that had to, for you, that had to feel like obviously you get the certificate or the whatever the official thing you're presented with at graduation, the certificate.
It's a certificate.
Certificate, badge, gun. You get it, and they tell you you're now a full-fledged police officer. But in your head, when you're walking around, did you ever have thoughts like, I wonder if they're right about this? Like, I wonder if I should be doing this right now at this point?
Yeah, I think if you're in that job, it's something that you probably believe in yourself in. And so, yeah, I mean, personally, I felt like, I could do the job. But yeah, dude, and you know what's crazy is California is actually probably at the top of the standard for training and everything. I think we had mentioned that before. A lot of other departments in other states, I mean, I've talked to guys, I get emails and stuff from guys that are like, oh yeah, I've been out on the road for a year and I'm just about to go to the academy. And I'm thinking, holy shit, like you've been working as a cop for a year and you haven't even gone to the academy. Like, yeah. So, I mean, that's even more crazy. So there are agencies out there where, man, like the training is even shorter than what I had. So it's just, yeah, I don't know, man. It's kind of nuts.
That would be, I could see that being a hell of a reality show if someone went around the different academies and you picked one academy every few months and you just went to different states just to see what it's like. And you took someone with no experience and you just put them through and you see what it's actually like. And then the California versus Idaho, versus Texas, like all the different shit that you have to deal with and different things that come with the parameters that those academies choose to employ or not employ when they're training people.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of it would be the same, but I mean, dude, it's also would probably be night and day too, at the same time. So yeah, everyone has different standards and states they all operate differently. And, like I said, California leads the way with, standard, but yeah, dude, I would never argue with anybody if they said police don't have enough training or, your academies aren't long enough. Like, I would never argue that. I would agree all day long on that.
I saw you worked on the SWAT team for 3 years, and you were doing high risk marijuana grow eradication.
Yeah. So when I was on the SWAT team at my old department, early on, I had got on the team. I tested and got on the team, and then go to a SWAT school, which is an additional 2-week course. And yeah, up where I worked, Northern California, my old department, I mean, there were a lot of, it's rural. So there was a lot of marijuana grows, and you would get cartel people, or folks down from Mexico. They would venture up there and start these massive grows, like out in the middle of nowhere. And essentially what they would do is they would give these workers, a lot of times they would kidnap these guys from Mexico, throw them in a van.
Wow.
They don't know where they're being taken. They drive them up there, drop them off, give them a tent, a bucket to go to their bathroom in, some food supplies. A lot of times they'd give them a rifle, like an AK-47 or some type of rifle.
Jeez.
And their job was to protect the marijuana grows. And the thing is a lot of times these guys were scared shitless, and you would either take a helicopter in and you'd have to drop into these places and hike in, or however you would get there. But a lot of times if you encountered these guys, they would usually just drop their guns and take off running. There have been times when they actually fire at the police, and there have been cops that have been shot doing these marijuana grows. So they are super, super dangerous. But you got to think, I mean, there's millions of dollars at stake with these grows, So, I mean, I've been in marijuana grows where, fields of marijuana with plants that are 10, 12, 15 feet tall. So it's obviously it's a serious deal for them, but, so those were kind of fun, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're out in the middle, it's hot, and then you got to hack down all these marijuana plants, and it's like, usually you don't even get anybody in custody.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
I've seen some of the videos where you have people in state parks that are just wandering around, and all of a sudden they come onto an expanse of just fields and fields of marijuana plants, and someone in the video is like, is this fucking weed? And they're like, yeah, it is. Like in Yellowstone State Park, or whatever state park these people are in. And I guess these, like you said, these guys from the cartel, they just come up from Mexico. They somehow get around the park security, and then they find an open expanse that's pretty quiet, and then they go to work growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. You feel bad too. Like sometimes you'll catch those guys and you'll interview them, and they just want to go home. Honestly, they don't want to be there. They don't even know where they're at. They have no fucking clue where they even are. So it's kind of sad. These guys get kidnapped and brought up there, and they threaten their lives and families if they don't do it. So it's kind of wild, actually. But it's kind of cool experience.
So this is the grows that you were eradicating. These are on the U.S. side of the border in California, and these guys are getting kidnapped in Mexico, like Mexican cartels coming into their home and essentially saying, go do this in California, else we'll kill your family, something along those lines.
Yeah, dude, they don't even tell them California. Like, they just load them up in cars. We've been told that they were blindfolded, and they just get driven to wherever they're going, and they get told this is what you're going to do. So it just, the thing with those outdoor marijuana grows too is it just kills the environment, because they need a source of water, right? So, usually there's some type of creek or something available to them, and the poisons and just all the chemicals that is involved in these grows, and that, and they're just throwing all their trash in the creeks. And so that's kind of the biggest concern with it, is just all of the pollution and poison that they're dumping into our rivers and creeks.
Do you know if the grows like that are starting to die down because of marijuana becoming legal, or are guys still, they're out there slinging, just, I guess, selling to states where it's not legal?
Yeah, no, it's still happening. I'm not as active or involved in it anymore because I don't work in that type of environment, but I have friends that do. And the marijuana game is still very active, and a lot of our homicides are as a result of marijuana, believe it or not.
Wow.
people doing drug rips at people's homes and they get shot and killed. We had an officer, I think 2 years ago, landed himself in the middle of a marijuana grow and investigating a theft, and one of the workers shot and killed him. Jesus. So it's still very active. It's a dangerous world. I mean, a lot of people think of marijuana and they're just, they're like, oh, it's just just a dope smoking drug or whatever. Like everything's cool. But if you actually dive deeper into the marijuana world, it's pretty crazy and is dangerous.
I bet. Because you're right. You do think of marijuana as the stereotypical hippie, pot smoking, chill vibe. That scene in Pineapple Express where Seth Rogen walks into James Franco's compound. He's just like, yo, what's up, dude? Like, what do you, he's like, he's making him like the cross joint. He's like your stereotypical weed dealer, and everyone he works with is chill. And now that's maybe not the best example, because later on in the movie, they do get held at gunpoint and shots do get fired. They get, so maybe that's is a good depiction of the marijuana game. But you think of it as like this super chill industry, even the underground parts of it. You don't really imagine that the marijuana game could get that risky and that violent because of the stereotypes portrayed in media. And usually those are reserved for cocaine, heroin trade, like movies and films about like the Colombian cartels and the like the heroin triangle over in Southeast Asia, like all the crazy shit that comes out of there. You never really think of like a marijuana underground cartel bust as being like AK-47s, people getting shot.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that's like I said, if you dove into that world, it's pretty amazing. I can honestly tell you, in the 16 years I've been a cop, I've been to more murders because of marijuana than any other drug out there, hands down. So it's active, especially during your budding season, with August, September through October. That's when you're probably going to get some homicides, and your shootings are going to go up. Robberies are going to go up. Home invasion robberies are going to go up because, people find out that you're storing some good amount of weed at your house, some bud. And next thing you know, you've got dudes busting down your door in the middle of the night, pointing a gun in your face. So, I mean, it's just dangerous.
Yeah, so. It's wild. I mean, if I had that much in my apartment in New York, I'd be like, yo, just like drive to New Jersey and you'll get it for half the price. Like,
no just kidding, fucking. The cops can smoke weed there now. So that's crazy. Like, you could work on marijuana busts and smoke weed technically if you're in a state where it's legal. Yeah, I guess, dude. I mean, it's not legal here for cops to do, but there are some, I think, agencies trying to push it. I don't know, but yeah, that does seem a little wild to me. But hey, man, it's 2023. Like, is it really that shocking?
No.
Like,
I would.
Not really.
If it were me, if I'm a cop and I bust a guy and we're in a marijuana grow operation, we're out in the fields, and he puts his gun down and like handcuffs are on, like we're just chilling, and there's just like pre-rolled J's lying around, like some bud, I'd be like, listen, you're going to jail for a long time. Let's just fucking smoke a J. Smoke it. I've had a long day. Let's just get high as fuck.
Yeah.
What?
I wouldn't be surprised, dude, if one day that happens.
What was would you consider the first hairy situation you were in as a cop? Was that part of the marijuana grow operations where like it's a gunfight going on, or the potential for gun violence, or was that after the grows?
Probably doing marijuana raids was probably for me at my old department. It was a small agency, probably. But again, dude, I was so young that like I don't even think it clicked. I'm like, here we are, like out in these fields in the middle of nowhere. You take a helicopter out there, and these dudes are running around with AK-47s, and like honestly, like I don't think it ever even clicked in my head that like, oh man, like I could die doing this. I mean, you're a young kid living basically a movie. Like that didn't even cross my mind, to be honest.
Is there a specific scenario you remember from that time where it was a particularly higher risk operation, or you were more likely to be lethal scenario, like something where you can vividly remember, like, oh fuck, like this is the realest it's been for me up to this point?
There was a call that I was on that I thought that I thought was going to happen, but it wasn't during a marijuana grow. But I do, like, looking back, like being on the SWAT team, you know, we would have to be there super early in the morning for these briefs, and you know, there's like DEA agents there and like pretty high scaled guys involved in these. And like, yeah, like I look back now and I think, holy shit, like to be a part of that was pretty cool. But then when I was like in the moment living it, I was just like, shit, this is cool. You know, like I didn't even think anything of it. But yeah, I mean, probably my first hairy situation that I thought, you know, where there were shots fired, that was on a call. But it wasn't during a marijuana raid.
What was that call? Was that after, as kind of a beat cop, or what were you doing at that time?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just a beat cop. And essentially, if I remember correctly, I got a call that I had to go talk to an attorney and let an attorney know that one of his clients was making death threats about him to a third party. So we're, you know, legally obligated to basically provide him with a warning, like, hey, this is what he's saying. So, you know, be careful. Like literally as I'm at his office talking to his attorney, we'll call him the suspect, the bad guy. He ended up going over to his ex-wife's house. So it was his, he had a child together with his ex-wife, and their child had, I think, Down syndrome, or, I believe he had Down syndrome. So he ends up going over to their house. Luckily, they had just left to go somewhere, and it's the middle of the day, and we're getting a call of shots fired at their house while I'm at the attorney's house telling him that this guy is making death threats against him. And there's only like 2 or 3 of us on duty at this department. So I go racing over there, and the guy is sitting in his truck. He's armed with a shotgun, and he tries like throwing the car and drive. He's got the gun in his lap. He almost hits one of my partners. My other partner, somebody breaks out the window and ultimately like tases this guy, and it worked out for us when we got him in custody. Now looking back, I think our tactics on that were a little hairy, but I don't think I knew any different. But he actually broke into the house, and without any warning, he just started blasting shotgun rounds in the house, I think, hoping to shoot his wife. In the
empty house, like he was just fucking spraying.
It was empty, yeah. He didn't know that it was. He thought they were there, and I think they had left to go check the mail or something crazy. Just by luck, they were gone. Yeah, and he just kicked down the door and just instantly just started shooting this shotgun inside this house, just shooting everything. And the neighbor ended up calling. So that was probably my first, I don't know, I guess you could call it was a scary interaction where I thought, this might go bad.
So when you got there, he was in the car or he was in the house? And you said he was trying to put it in drive towards you guys, like almost bash you guys?
Yeah, he had just gotten to his truck, and he's trying to leave when we showed up, and we kind of converged on him. And I mean, he almost ran one of the officers over, and someone broke out his window, shot him with the taser. I think the one and only time I've ever seen a taser be effective was that day, luckily. Because otherwise we probably would have had to shoot him.
When you say converge, can you, because I literally know nothing about the sort of tactics that you're supposed to use in a situation like that, like getting out of the car, how to position your body. Can you walk me through just tactically how you go from being in a car and this guy's in another car with a shotgun to de-escalating that situation, like from getting out of the car to giving him commands and shit, like taking cover? Can you kind of just tell me how you went about that?
Yeah, so I would, like I said, I mean, looking back, I wouldn't do that now. Like my tactics and approach would be a lot different on something like that. But back then, if I remember correctly, somebody tried to block his car in with one of their patrol cars, and we kind of just ran up on both sides of the window, the passenger and the driver's side, and broke out his window, and we're trying to get him to stop. And I just remember seeing the shotgun laying on his lap, and my partner from the other side of the car ended up shooting and tasing him. So I would say that's probably not the best tactics. I mean, I don't think we should have done that looking back, but shit, I'm so young. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, to be honest.
What would have been a better tactic? What would you do now if you see a guy? I'm assuming he was he holding it on his lap, or was he just kind of?
Yeah, he had it. He was holding on to it.
So what do you do now if you're in a situation like that, if you're not going to use the taser?
Yeah, well, I think you always want to try to give yourself distance and cover if you can, especially if you know somebody's armed. Like we knew going into that he was armed and shots had already been fired. So, I think giving yourself a little bit of distance, using your car as cover or whatever you can as cover, and either trying to initiate some type of traffic stop or, heck, maybe it goes pursuit and the guy takes off. I mean, you're probably going to chase somebody like that because there's such a high risk to the public. I think the best answer is just distance and cover is the best thing you can do for somebody that is armed. I don't think running up on a car with a dude that's armed with a shotgun is a good idea.
Yeah, no, I'm watching The Last of Us right now. That's definitely not the move that works out in that show with the mushroom zombies. Completely different situation. But the problem. Go ahead.
Sorry, dude. I was gonna say the problem is working in a small departments, dude. Like call volumes are low. They're not. You're not getting the repetition as if you were working at a busier, bigger city. And so, the one time that stuff like that happens, like odds are you're probably not going to handle it the right way. And it like it all comes down to like lack of training and just not getting those reps.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, where I worked, it's just a slow, small department, and like stuff like that didn't really happen that often. So I mean, I'm not blaming any one person, but that's just the reality of it. This just didn't happen. All the time.
That's the first thing that pops into my head when I see a lot of the police shooting videos, whether it's like police on civilian or like a two-way gunfight. The first thing that pops into my head for a lot of these supposedly racially motivated shootings, which maybe some of them are, but a lot of times I feel like I'm looking at a guy who has never had a gun pulled on him before, like how I would react if someone like had a gun, or maybe there was a gun in the car, but they didn't reach for it yet, or like just like a very high tense situation where in the back of your mind that you could die within the next 30 seconds. I see these videos and I think that like some of the flailing or just like the just like not relaxing and being able to sit in the pocket, like feeling like you have control over a situation. To me, it looks like exactly what you were saying. A lot of these officers just are not getting high value repetitions in that exact thing, which is dealing with armed suspects or dealing with a traffic stop with a possibility of a weapon or something like that, and being able to de-escalate it in a non-lethal manner.
Yeah, and I mean, those are such rare occasions anyways. Like it doesn't matter where you work. I mean, you could work at the busiest department or the biggest city. It just kind of depends on areas that you work. How often are you encountering these types of individuals that are armed? And then the reality is you can never replicate real life training. I mean, you can't replicate real life in training. So, but the best thing you can do is just, constantly do stress-induced type scenarios and try to condition your brain as best as possible or as best as you can to be able to think and make a rational decision while under an intense amount of stress. And, in this profession, it's unfortunate, but a lot of officers, I think, show up to work. They probably lace up their boots, throw their vest on and thinking, hey, I'm here to go to work and collect my paycheck. And they're not thinking about those things until it actually happens. And then, it's just too late. And I think I mentioned earlier when we were talking is a lot of these officers that either get killed or they're involved in some type of lethal encounter, and maybe it ends up turning out to be a bad shooting. I think if you peel back the layers, it comes down to not being able to operate under stress and have that cognitive thinking while under stress, and then bad decisions are made. So it's a risky game to be playing, man. Like, you really got to know the rules of the game that you're playing, and you got to be prepared for it, because if not, I mean, look at all these cops that go to prison. Ultimately people die at the end of it. So it's dangerous for sure.
Yeah. I can't imagine what it's like to have that insane spike of adrenaline of having your gun and someone else's gun in the situation, not knowing if the person's on drugs, not knowing if they have a history of past violence. Maybe it's not even a gun. Maybe like it just looks like a gun and it's a split second thing. And having to think rationally and calmly, like to me, there's no way to be able to react appropriately in that situation unless you're doing hundreds or even thousands of repetitions simulating that sort of situation as close as you can. Because I like to think back to baseball, because I played for so long through college, when I'm thinking about like repetitions, and the best thing you can do is, as a pitcher, you can create bullpen type situations where you're simulating a game. So like you're getting a little spike of adrenaline, there's pressure on you, maybe there's a punishment for, you're competing against each other in practice, but you have something on the line, and it forces you to be in a lesser version of an arena, and then you get to game day. Yeah. And so you're a little better prepared. There's nothing you can do to exactly 100% replicate a competition scenario, but I'm like, what would that even be in terms of if you're a cop, let's say, trying to do a traffic stop where maybe there's like a 50% chance that that person has a weapon? Like, how would you even go about that? Would that be within the department? Would you have to get together with officers outside that? Like, how would you go about trying to do something like that?
I think the best way to put it is you have to do all of this on your own. So like you said, thousands of repetitions, right? To be proficient at something. How do you do that when it comes to life and death situations? The only way you can do that is try to condition your brain to manage stress. So, doing mental scenarios, running mental scenarios through your head constantly while you're driving around, playing out scenarios in your head from start to finish, and going to the gym, being active, all those things, you're building up the ability to have that good cognitive thinking under stress. I mean, people don't think about that, but if you go to the gym and you do some type of high intensity workout, like you're building yourself up, you're building your brain up to manage that. So when you get an adrenaline dump, that adrenaline surge will come down a lot sooner, rather than getting that adrenaline dump on a high stress call and then, staying up in that peaking, area where you can't bring it down. So the sooner you can bring the stress down, your adrenaline, all those things down, the better off you are. And man, like, honestly, I think the best way to do that is just try to do mental rehearsals of scenarios and go to the gym, be active. All those things are only going to help you in the long run.
Is there anything that you do outside of the precinct or other cops can do that is a physical rehearsal? Because like you can only visualize a traffic stop so many times, but like something where someone has a fake gun in a car and you're not going to die, but like maybe you just do that 100 times on a weekend or something, like pulling someone over and you just like run through it with some other guys on the force. Is there anything like that in terms of physical repetitions, or do people not really do that?
Dude, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say people don't actually do that. Yeah, you do that in training, but if you're only doing one day of training, let's just say even once a month, plus if you're in a training environment, you're gonna have multiple officers there trying to do the same thing. So a lot of times you may get 1, 2, 3 reps in, but what you're describing is going to have to be done on your own time, probably with a friend. And the reality is people just aren't doing that. You know, you got lives, husband, wives, kids, you know, you got stuff to do on your days off, and you're already tired from your work days anyways. So, I mean, I probably look tired right now, and I work graveyards, you know, and I'm on my days off.
You look great. The complexion's sparkling right
thanks. Now. Thank you. But it's hard to get caught up, you know, on sleep and all those things. And the last thing people want to do is put in more time for work, right? So that's the dilemma in this whole thing, in this career and job is, like I said, man, when I got into it, I didn't give any of that a whole lot of thought. And I just don't think a lot of people do. And then unfortunately you get wrapped up in these situations, and I've been in enough of them now where, you know, being a veteran, more experienced cop, that's why I think it's my job. That's why we do our podcast, you know, and it's our job to educate these younger cops or maybe even cops that have never been in situations like that. Just try to tell them, like, hey, there are things that you can do to be better. You know, take it from us, made a shit ton of mistakes. I still make mistakes all the time. But, you know, it just comes down to education and providing knowledge, you know, to try to help the next generation be better, or, you know, give them some advice. So
yeah, visualization and mental reps can be great, but I'll go back to baseball again, not comparing bat fights to gunfights. I know it's completely different, but just like sitting there before every single game, I would sit in the locker room for 10, maybe 15 minutes while I'm just listening to some music, and I'm visualizing what pitches I might throw, what hitters I might face, and you go into a situation feeling really confident when you do that. And I believe it does help, like maybe like 5-10% in terms of performance wise. If you're able to visualize yourself succeeding, there is some carryover to the actual success rate. But then you throw the first inning and some guy smacks the first pitch off the wall, and you're starting with a man on second. You're like, fuck, this did not happen in my visualization. Like that guy took that pitch, and maybe in your visualization you hit the outside corner and you threw that pitch right down the middle, and the guy just fucking spanked it. So I don't know what the solution is. Obviously people like yourself and other people, you know, way smarter than me are working on this problem. But just off the top of my head, I would think you're right. Like, you can't expect guys to take away time, especially unpaid time. Ask them to spend unpaid time away from their family or away from things outside of work. So I would think if a precinct wanted to implement something like more physical repetitions, and let's say they wanted every police officer to get 1,000 reps of traffic stops every year, you'd have to pay them for training and essentially take them out of the field for a couple months. Like like every 6 months on the job, you do 2 months off, and like you go back and you train 6 months on, 2 months off, something like that. I don't know. I've heard people talk about that as alternatives. I don't know if any precincts are implementing it at the moment, but that seems like the best way to do it.
You're right. Here's the stall out though is always going to be staffing, right? Like there's such a shortage of staffing right now in the policing world that would be nice, but right now I don't think that's on anybody's radar to even be able to accomplish that. I mean, it's hard enough to get one guy or girl just to go to a day training. So, and then you talk about overtime, and like you said, paying. I mean, there's people that they'll show up 10 minutes before their shift starts, not even ready to go. And they're like, and their theory is, well, I don't get paid until 6. So I'm not showing up till 6. Right.
Yeah.
Which is a fucking horrible philosophy to have in our profession. But you know, where you got the people that hold over maybe 15 minutes and they're like, I'm putting in for a half hour of overtime because that's my time, you know? So how do you compete with that? I mean, you're not going to win with somebody like that. You can't expect people like that with that mindset to put in the extra work and do it for free. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe the police force would have to start filtering for different people, different types of personalities. The military does it with deployment. So it would almost be like a deployment schedule where you go to Afghanistan for 8 to 10 months, and then you come back for a few months, and then you deploy somewhere else. So almost like a precinct deployment where you're out in the field in LA for 8 months, and then you come back, and those guys seem to be able to, and women seem to be able to get in a rhythm, and that's like an expected thing. So maybe if precincts did have the budget and they started doing that, then the recruiting would change to people that were more open to the militarized style training, and instead of people that are nitpicking like 5 minutes of overtime.
It's funny you say that. So my buddy Scott Savage, I got to give him credit for this. He's a longtime cop. In fact, he's getting ready to retire here this year. He owns a big law enforcement training company, Savage Training Group. And he recently was featured on a podcast, and I was watching it, and he put it pretty nicely in that, why don't we do away with all these small little agencies, town here, town there, 5 cops here, 10 cops, 20 cops here. Why not make it more of broader and kind of condense it so it's one bigger agency? And honestly, if you did that, I think you'd probably be able to do what you're talking about, because you'd have, 3, 4, 10 times the amount of staffing to be able to do something like that. But and then everyone is more on the same page. Training is obviously going to be better, but I like that idea. I think you scrap away all these small town cities that have these departments, like where I came from, and make it one big department to cover the whole area. And then I think you could probably deploy something like that. But
how
knows,
big?
Man, I don't know if that'll
in that
happen,
situation, hypothetically, how big would each department be? Would it be by state? Would it be like a regional thing?
I think so. Yeah, I think it would have to go by state and what region you live in, and you kind of break it up like that. But I mean, when he said that, I'm like, actually, that's a really good idea. I can't believe we don't even do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but no, it's
so
that could be one way to do it for sure. I was thinking, after we ended the last part of our conversation, with everything that is happening right now in sectors like space travel or electric cars, where you have all this private money, essentially billionaires that want to do cool shit and they put money into it, and they're doing it better than the current establishment, like guys like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I could see, some billionaire out there that's just fed up with the police force and is like, I'm just going to start my own academy, like a private academy, and they'll be fucking like the baddest cops on the planet, like savages. And then cities will have to pay me to contract out my police force. So like the city of San Diego can pay, Kyle Shoberg's LLC, like your corporation, like the Kyle Shoberg Academy, like they'll give you $100 million to like send your police force to San Diego for 1 year. And then like maybe the next year Chicago outbids them. And then it like actually starts a competition for which academies could be better. I have no idea if that could actually work. That sounds ridiculous, but it does sound cool. I mean, like someone could just start their own private police force, and then you create some level of competition where you're incentivized to do better, because maybe another city will bid higher on your contract, or other private police forces are out there that are doing better than you, like to ingrain some level of competition into it.
Yeah. You know what? I'm all for it. I'm down for whatever. Policing right now is such a hot topic everywhere. It's such under the microscope that I'm game for whatever makes people better, make better decisions. Like, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I know we could probably be doing something different, and we just have to somehow develop that or come up with it. I don't know.
I don't know how many billionaires listen to this podcast, but if there's one guy just smoking, if there's one guy just like smoking weed, listening to, police chats / marijuana eradications and looking for somewhere to spend his money, hit up Kyle Shoberg.
Dude, hit up Joe. Tag. Make sure you tag Joe Rogan in this, and maybe he can help you out.
100%. Hit up Joe Rogan, Kyle Shoberg, and give them $100 million to start their own private police academy, and then you sell your services to cities, because those are the people that would buy you. The cities have enough money to be like, hey, we'll pay you for this much, and then maybe they just go with you as their main police force, and the other precincts are just supplementary.
Yeah, I mean, probably save on lawsuits and everything else the city would. Yeah. So who knows? I mean, maybe it'll come to that someday.
So what was your first gunfight, like the first shots fired situation?
For me, was where I was a shooter. Went to a domestic violence call with a couple other partners, and kind of started out as just a typical domestic violence call, and it started to gradually build its way up. And one of the kids inside the house, there were 2 or 3 young kids in the house, called back on 911 and said, hey, their dad was choking their mom. He'd got a gun. He was threatening to shoot the mom. And then when we got on scene, a couple of us kind of split up because we didn't exactly know where the apartment, where the actual apartment was in this complex. And we kind of got split up. So I'm with another partner, and next thing you know, you hear gunshots, but you can't hear exactly where it's coming from because the sound was, bouncing off the different buildings. And I actually thought it was further away than what it was. It actually ended up being right next to us. And he's in a second story building. And I remember coming around the corner of the building, and I looked over at my partner, and I'm like, hey, where's that coming from, or where's the apartment at? And, he's kind of like, I don't know. And as that conversation's being had, the suspect ended up walking down the flight of stairs, probably 20 feet in front of us. And this image is burned in my brain. He was a larger Hispanic guy. He had a bright all white t-shirt on. And I remember he had a gun in his right hand, and he just starts looking around like he's looking for us. And it was almost like slow motion to me. He ends up seeing us. We kind of lock eyes, and then I don't know who shot first, but we start shooting at each other, and he ends up running back up the stairwell. And when that little engagement happened, I mean, honestly, I think that's where everything clicked for me. And it was that holy shit moment. I thought I was going to die. And I remember being in that moment. I ran in a circle for some reason. I have no idea why. And I think
circles are relaxing. It's very,
oh yeah. Well, I don't think I was relaxed.
It's very symmetrical.
So I run in a circle, and I remember thinking all these things in my head, like, holy shit, this is really happening. I can't believe this. It was surreal. And then, so I think I was in panic mode for a hot second. And then I was able to snap myself out of it. And then I started to become just angry. And I started thinking he was going to exit out the back of his apartment, come around, flank us, shoot us from behind. So I ended up running around to the back of the building, which turns out he wasn't able to get back there anyways. And then I run back to the front of the building, because now I'm starting to think he's just going to run around the corner and just execute us. So I kind of pie around the corner. And as I do that, he's comes down the stairs again. We engage in another gunfight, exchange of rounds. I'm thinking I'm shooting the guy, because based on his body posturing, it looks like he's being shot, but he's
you see him movies. Jolting, shoulders moving and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can kind of see him jolting, like he's flinching. So in my eyes, I'm shooting him, but it's not like in the movies where you shoot someone, they fly 10 feet backwards and they're dead. It's not like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, we were talking about Bad Boys, earlier in this episode. Yeah, no. Just someone, Will Smith with a big ass Magnum in his hand, and he blows a hole through the guy's back when the bullet leaves him. That's the cinematic version.
Yeah, with smoke coming out of it. Yeah, no, that doesn't happen. And so he's still in the fight, and I don't know why I thought this, but I was like, my gun's broken. I thought my bullets were broke or something crazy. And I actually had a ride along with me. This 18-year-old girl, never done a ride along, Thought she wanted to be a cop.
She was in the car while this was happening.
She was in the car, yeah. And man, so I'm thinking my bullets are broke. So I end up running back to my car where she's at. I open the door, the passenger side door, and she is like, I mean, she's terrified. She's crying. She's like hunkered down in the passenger floorboard. She's freaking out. And I'm just like, hey, just stay down. And I grab my rifle out of the car. And by this point, other officers are showing up. And, you know, one of them, my good buddy Nate, shows up. And he's running up and he's got his rifle. And I'm like, don't go around the corner. He's around the corner. So he takes a position up at the corner of the building. I get my rifle. I tell my boss, who ends up showing up, I'm like, hey, I wanted to get to a different position behind a dumpster enclosure that was kind of down the parking lot a little ways, but it was all concrete. And I thought if I could get behind the dumpster enclosure, I would be able to get good, effective shots up into this stairwell where he kept retreating up. So basically what he was doing was he would fire his gun, go upstairs. You could hear him reloading. So he had preloaded magazines upstairs in his apartment, and he would come back downstairs and he would just start shooting in our direction. He would fire in the parking lot, and it's like 6 o'clock in the evening. And so in the summertime, so, I mean, there were people coming out of their apartments and we're like, run.
Yeah. They're just like drinking White Claws on the stoop. Dude, and, you know, going out on the balcony.
There was a guy, I have the cell phone footage of it. He was kind of in the middle of this gunfight, and he's just sitting there recording on his phone the whole time. I mean, like no big deal. So,
I mean, I'm not surprised. Anyways, there are people that get within 10 feet of grizzly bears and they'll just fucking film and stand there. So that guy, you know.
Yeah. And then you see it on YouTube. It's like, guy gets mauled by bear. And then you watch the video and you're like, what is he doing?
Or maybe it was a TikTok video and he's trying to time his dance moves with the gunshots. So he's like timing them up with his moves. And then did he bring out the tripod and the ring light?
Yeah. Yeah. He's like doing a selfie.
He asks you, can you hold this one sec? Like, as you're shooting, can you get me?
Yeah. So this dude's in the middle of this whole thing filming it. But, so anyways, one of the officers, got trapped behind a car in the parking lot, and the guy kept firing at her, she's behind this car. And I mean, she basically got pinned down. So I almost made it to the dumpster enclosure. And then, you know, she gets on the radio basically screaming for help, cause she's pinned down. So I'm like, all right, I'm not making it to the dumpster enclosure. This is about as far as I'm going. So I ended up getting down on my stomach. I belly crawled up to the wheel well of a Toyota 4Runner that was parked there. He didn't know that I was there. And my buddy Nate's on the corner of this building. I was able to get a good eyesight up the stairwell in a prone position. And I remember laying there and I put my sights right on that stairwell. And I'm like, okay, if he comes back down the stairwell, like, I got him. And sure enough, he comes back down. I think he fires maybe one or two more rounds off, and my buddy Nate steps around the corner, and then I fire, I think, 9 or 10 shots with my rifle. Nate shoots probably 9 or 10 rounds also with his rifle, and we hit him. He falls down the stairs, drops the gun out of his hand, and that was the end of that. We were able to go upstairs, rescue his wife, who we had thought he shot her in the head. He actually had almost pistol whipped her to death.
Jesus.
So she's severely wounded. We were able to get her out. And the kids that were in the apartment that I left out before we got in the gunfight, they were able to run out of the apartment, and basically we told them to just run. They ran into another apartment and hid. So it was a shitty ordeal. I mean, you know, the family dynamics are obviously not good, but you know, this is on video and we're having to get the wife out, and she's having to step over her now dead husband at the bottom of the stairwell. The kids saw it. They're asking if their dad was dead. That was a shitty circumstance to have to be involved in. I'm glad that we made it out, but you know, I kind of look back at that and it's like, of the shootings I've been in, I think that one probably affected me the most, just because you got the kids involved, you know, the wife, we hadn't been called out to that apartment for anything major. I think he had only been arrested one other time for a DUI. But it's not like this guy was
that's a big escalation
crazy,
from driving drunk to pistol whipping your wife and being in a standoff with the cops.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like he just, I don't know, man. Like he just snapped that day. He was drunk. And that was the outcome of that. So
do you,
it was,
in kind of the post-mortem of the situation, do you ever go back to try to dig through what led to the outburst, or once the call is resolved and people are safe, you just file it away and you're like, whatever, just it is what it is?
Yeah. Nah, for me personally, I don't like to go back and dabble too much into the why. I just kind of want to, I don't want to just say I just file it away, but I don't know. I feel like the more digging you probably do into figuring out why somebody would try to do something like that, maybe I think it might just eat at you a little more. I don't know. I just never really felt the need to want to dig into that. I just kind of want to process it and tell myself we did the right thing and kind of move on.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's wild to think about that someone without a history of violence, drunk driving, you could have easily gotten pulled over for drunk driving in college, and a few years later you're shooting at the cops. Like that's such a crazy progression.
I know. It's like they're there hanging out at home. A verbal argument starts between him and his wife, and then it escalated into that. So I can only imagine the family dynamics behind closed doors probably wasn't great. Maybe he was abusive.
Do you know if he had any drugs in his system, or was he drunk as shit at the time?
I don't think so. I don't think he had drugs in his system. I think he was just pretty intoxicated.
Okay. So, did you find out if the bullets that you thought hit him initially actually hit him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did actually. So I shot him 4 times with my handgun, which was I had a 40 caliber at the time. In his arm, I know he got shot somewhere in his chest, and they just weren't shots that were fatal, or at least fatal at that time to stop him. Not until we shot him with a rifle.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that for someone like me who's never shot a gun or shot at someone before, the fact that you could hit someone multiple times and not kill them, or maybe one of those shots are lethal, but it takes 30 seconds or maybe a couple minutes for that person to die. And because I'm thinking like you hit someone in the chest, I start celebrating. I'm like, that dude's fucking dead, but it could take him a couple minutes to die, and he's shooting at you from the ground. So that type of stuff you never really think about unless I'm talking to someone who's been through it, like yourself. All these variables that go into a situation where you're shooting at someone and someone's shooting at you, and they're, depending on what drugs they have in their system, how big the person is, cardio, things like that could all go into a person being able to survive long enough to end up killing you, when maybe in another situation that guy or girl would already be dead.
Yeah, we got lucky. I mean, you could feel like he was hitting the side of the building that we were taking cover behind, and you can feel like stucco and debris hitting you in the side of the head and the face from his round. So I mean, it was for sure close. And to put it in perspective, like I tell other officers or anybody for that matter, I'm like, if you've ever been to a range, which you said you have, if you point your gun at the target, imagine a human being at the other end of that gun, right? Everything you've ever been taught and raised with gun safety as a kid, everything has always been, don't ever point your gun at somebody, and unless you obviously intend on using it. But the fact that it's a human being on the other end of it, not a target, it's such an unnatural thing to shoot that person. It's just not a natural feeling that a normal person would do. And so I don't know, I guess the next time you're at the range and you're shooting a target, like just imagine a human being at the other end of that gun, and having to pull the trigger. I mean, it's just,
I'm just imagining, if I asked one of the guys who works for the range, I'm like, do you have any human targets? He's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So, I mean, seriously though, like,
but I get if you're going to be shooting at someone or you're practicing self-defense, you have to get used to shooting at something that's shaped like a human body.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, when it comes down to it, like, it's just not a natural thing to ever have to do. And that's where training comes in, and being able to do that. You know, a lot of people can't do that because it is such an unnatural thing. You know, they think they can until it comes down to it, and they can't. So, yeah. Anyways, that was my first shooting.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, just hearing you talk about how unnatural it is to point a gun at someone. I think I mentioned it last time, but I've been doing Muay Thai for a couple of years, and even now, I'm still hesitant to punch someone in the face during sparring. I'm never going 100%. Like, we're usually going 60, 70%. But I had to learn that it's okay to punch someone in the face, even with them punching me in the face. Like, I still felt bad about landing a shot on someone. And one of the instructors in the gym had to tell me, you know, like, extend through your punches. It's okay if someone's guard is down. You're not helping them by pulling your punches. You're not going 100%. No one's really going to get hurt. You might get a bruise here or there. But, like, even that, I still get a slightly off-putting sensation when I land a shot. And, you know, I can't even imagine the squeamish feeling of amping that up 100 times with firing a weapon at someone.
Yeah.
Do you remember specifically what sort of sensations or impulses were running through your mind or body during the gunfight while you were firing shots? Like, just pure adrenaline? Do you have any thoughts that entered your mind? Just like anything physically imprinting or mentally imprinting that you can remember?
Yeah, actually, I vividly remember time slowing down, and I've done a lot of extensive research after the fact, you know, because I'm like, did time really slow down? Like, I tell people this, and I'm sure I sound like an idiot, because I'm like, man, I saw my rounds ejecting from the chamber. Like, you can see the muzzle flash of your gun, all these weird sensations, you know. I mean, and it's true, your body does go into like hypersensitive mode because it's in survival mode. So everything does slow down in your brain. And I just remember, like, not ever looking for my front sights, which is a whole nother topic, but just pointing and shooting and having this basically like white blob in my sight picture in my eyes, because he had this like bright white shirt on. And that like really stuck out to me. I had a lot of dreams after that where in my dream, I would just see a person walking by themselves with just like a bright white shirt on. And it was, I don't know, it was just weird. That for some reason, that was something that stuck out to me.
The sights, when you mentioned you don't have to, or you weren't looking through your front sights, you're talking about those little spokes on the gun, like you're supposed to look through them at a range, or and you weren't looking through those during the gunfight, but obviously it still worked out for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of research and study done in this where, you know, study shows that if you are in a gunfight, especially a close quarters gunfight, you're not finding your front sights. You're pointing and shooting, and your brain goes into tunnel vision for you, which that's part of the survival mode. And we all talk about like tunnel vision, that's bad. Well, in this instance, it's actually works in your favor in that your brain will hyper focus on what the threat is. So if there's a guy standing in front of you with a gun, the threat's obviously going to be the gun. So your brain will hyper focus on that. So when you point and shoot, it's almost like by default, your brain is aiming for you. And that's why a lot of times, you know, people get gunshots out of their hands, which in this case, we did shoot the gun. We split the trigger guard in half. He got shot several times in the hand. Cops get shot in the hands, arms, guns also, because the same thing works for bad guys. If someone's shooting at the cops, like their brain is also hyper focusing on the officer's gun. So the whole theory of, finding your front sight and all these things, I've been in so many arguments with people about this. I can only speak from my personal experience. I've been in 4 shootings now, all similar circumstances, and I can't say I ever use my front sight. I just point. It's all been pointing and shooting, and so that's why when like I go to the range, or if I'm, giving anybody some piece of advice, if you're going to go to the range, a lot of times you see cops that have like these cool ass optics on their handguns and spending thousands of dollars and shit. It's like, okay, that's cool. And they go and they stand on the line and their threat's been given to shoot the target, and they like go, they line up, they get their target all set, and they're like, pow, pow. It's like, dude, do you think that's what's going to happen in real life? No. You need to get your gun out of your holster, lay effective rounds down at the target as fast as you can and as accurate as you can. So, guys that want to go to the range and be all cool and sexy and put groupings like, that big on the target, that's all cool at the range. But I'm here to tell you from past experience that doesn't happen in real life.
Yeah. And not to mention, I'm sure, and you said you've been in 4 shootings, which is fucking insane to even just be in 1. But I imagine in a lot of these situations, you're shooting on the run. So like just add in your vision bouncing too. It's someone shooting at you. And, at that point, what's even the point of trying to look through the sights when the sights may not even be reliable, because you're literally running towards or running away from someone, and you have to be quick. So like all these variables that are just like insane to account for. I imagine, it kind of comes back to the physical repetitions where you just have to trust your instincts in that moment. Like that's not the moment to line up your technique and practice it. Like you have to just like have it down pat already.
Yeah, and I've been in arguments with guys, and then they're like, "No, you got to find your front sights." And I'm like, "How many gunfights have you been in?" None. Okay. I'm like, I'm not the end all be all. I don't know everything about firearms. I'm not some firearm extremist. But I do know in my experience and talking with, I have several friends who have been in shootings as well. Not one of them said that they found their front sight. So I guess it's probably a debatable thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't train it, because there's definitely probably going to be a time and a place where that's going to come in handy. But I think in any type of close quarter gunfight, it's going to be point and shoot, getting rounds down fast. And you're going to be moving, you're getting off the X, like all those things. You're not going to be able to sit there and line up your eyes with that is the last thing you're thinking about. Trust me.
Yeah. So based on your experience, which puts you in the top 0.00001% of number of gunfights people have been in on the planet, because almost every single person that has ever lived dies with being in 0. But based on everything you've been through and those situations and variables, if you were going to recommend a gun to someone for self-defense, what type of gun would you recommend?
Well, that's such a loaded question, I think, because are you talking home self-defense? Are you concealed carry out in the public? And look, I'm not a gun, huge gun guy. I don't own 50 guns. There's other people out there that have way better advice than I do. But that's a perfect example though. Just knowing that in a gunfight, you're not going to find your front sights, or that you've been successful, taking down the target without finding your front sights. That's insider information that would definitely apply to that situation. Let's just say home invasions for the sake of the argument. Yeah, okay,
home invasion.
Perfect. And that's what I was going to say. A lot of people like to use shotguns for home protection, because there's not a whole lot of accuracy that's needed. If someone's busted down your door and you have access to a shotgun, I mean, pick that thing up and fire it, and you're going to hit somebody. So a lot of people, I think, like to use shotguns as home self-defense. Some people will carry pistols by their bedside, but again, I mean, just because you shoot somebody doesn't mean they're going to go down. Now, if you hit somebody with a shotgun, I think you have a higher likelihood of probably causing more serious damage, especially at close range. And you don't need a whole lot of accuracy to accomplish that. So I don't know, that'd be my, I guess, PSA on that. But like I said, I'm probably not the guy to come doing, which is funny because I am a police officer. I, been on SWAT and did K9 for most of my career and been involved in these shootings and stuff. And people think that I'm like a gun nut and I'm not. I'm not even really into guns.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to be obsessed with it. It's another thing to have actually been through it, because there are a lot of gun nuts, and I'm sure a lot of those guys have never actually been in gunfights. Like people that are just obsessed with knowing about guns and shooting guns and learning about the different aspects of it. But that makes sense for a shotgun with a home invasion, because like you said, it's more accurate. You don't have to be exact. Also, just racking a shotgun, like if I'm a teenager or something breaking into someone's house and maybe I have a knife and I hear a shotgun rack from the kitchen, I'm sprinting out of there the fastest 60-yard dash I've ever run in my life. Like, so with that, you wouldn't even have to fire a shot. So I'm sure there have been many times where someone hears a shotgun rack in a house and then they just fucking sprint out the door.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen it at being a cop. We used to carry shotguns, and you'd rack that thing, and people comply real quick.
What's the debriefing process like after a shooting? Like you bring that girl back that was on the ride along, which
the ride along was over at that point.
Do you just go back in the car at that point and look at her and say, "Just another Tuesday"?
No,
just to freak her out.
Actually, I think by the time I got back to my car, another officer had already grabbed her and taken her to safety. I actually didn't even see her after that. I actually, honest to God, I've never seen her again. That was the last time I ever saw her, was when I opened the passenger side door to get my rifle. Last time I ever seen her, because she got taken away. I did follow up with her and on the phone, I think a few weeks after the fact, just to check on her, but I had never seen her again.
I mean, it makes sense if you go to your first day of an internship, essentially, and there's a gunfight. I don't care if it's police officer or you're making sandwiches at Subway. I'm never fucking doing that job again in my life. Like, that's crazy.
I don't think she had any desire to want to be a cop after that. And honestly, the odds of that ever happening on a ride along is like, dude, like 0.0000001%. Like, it's so rare. It just, unfortunately, that was her first ride along too. So, but for me, the process is you get sequestered by yourself with another officer. You get taken back to the station. You're not allowed to discuss the incident because it's a homicide. So you're being investigated for a homicide until the district attorney deems it was a justifiable homicide. So think about that. I mean, that's serious. So you're not allowed to discuss it with anybody. You get your attorney. Part of our union, we have attorneys on file, and you call one of them up. They show up. You can tell them what happened, obviously, because there's the attorney-client privilege. But anybody outside of that, you're not allowed to. So you discuss with your attorney what happened. You usually, not all the time, but usually, if you can, you and your attorney will go back out to the scene, and they call it a scene walkthrough. And basically, obviously, all the detectives and like everybody's out there. DA investigators are out there, and it's a big to-do, obviously. And you basically kind of walk through and you tell your attorney, hey, this is where I was. This is where I fired my first rounds. This is where I fired my, second rounds, whatever. I was shooting that direction. So you can have that conversation with your attorney just to kind of get a layout of the whole scene. And then from there, it's go back to the police department, get your photos taken of whatever it is you were wearing. They collect your gun. They give you a new gun. They count all your bullets that are in all of your magazines. They count all the bullets that are in your gun. to account for every round. A lot of paperwork that you got to sign. And then essentially from there, after that, that's a few hours right there. Then they put you on administrative leave and you go home. And then from there, it's just it's a long process. You got to come back to the station within, a day or two and give a statement to the detectives. That can be a little grueling. Because again, you're being investigated for a homicide. So you have to articulate why you use deadly force. And albeit it might be the most justified thing ever, right? Like he's shooting at us. You still have to articulate why you fired your gun and killed this person. Nobody can do that for you. And so your attorney is sitting there with you. So, you feel like you're being interrogated like a criminal.
Well, you're technically a suspect if they're investigating a homicide.
Yeah, you're not labeled as a suspect unless they were to deem it a bad shooting. But you do have to go through the same motions as what a suspect would have to go to and answer all those same questions. So that's a little daunting, especially if it's the first time you've ever done it.
Just someone it's
intimidating.
Someone throwing around the word homicide while I'm trying to explain what happens. I would be thinking in my head the whole time, if I fuck up a sentence, I'm going to jail. Like I'm just thinking about worst case scenario. I don't explain something properly, whatever, anything that could happen, maybe in your memory recall, because that's also another thing people don't talk about is how unreliable your memory can be in very high adrenaline, high risk circumstances, that you can misremember a lot of things. Maybe you did make the right decision, but the way you remember it was you were acting in the wrong. So you actually incriminate yourself when in reality, like you actually acted completely fine, or vice versa. So like there's so much shit that could go on in a situation like that.
Yes, you nailed it on the head. And there's a thing called critical stress amnesia, and you may only recount up to 30% of what actually occurred. So what does that mean for you if you're a cop and you're ever involved in a shooting? You never, ever, ever should ever give your statement the day of the incident, because you may only recall up to 30% of what happened. And that is very true in all my cases. You generally aren't going to remember everything, because your brain blacks out everything else at the time that doesn't matter. Okay. Because the only thing that matters to your brain at that particular time is surviving, and you're only going to remember little chunks and bits of what happened. So the problem is if you don't remember something and somebody asks you something, what do you think you're going to try to do?
If I don't remember something and someone asks me,
if you don't remember something and I ask you, what are you going to try to do? You're going to probably try to fill in the gaps of what you think happened.
I definitely speculate, maybe someone else told me their memory and I don't even realize that I'm saying someone else's memory and it's not my own personal recall.
Exactly. So that could be very detrimental to somebody who's being investigated for a homicide, filling in the blanks with something that didn't actually happen. And maybe it's on video. Nowadays it's going to be on body cam more than likely, security footage, cell phone footage, like whatever. It's more than likely it's going to be on video. And if you say you did something that you didn't, it's going to be contradictory to what is on video, now you have a problem, right? So you should be giving yourself, 24, 48, I would even prefer 72-hour sleep cycle. And when you're getting that sleep cycle and you're getting that REM sleep, your brain is like a Rolodex, and it's starting to process everything that happened. And so now you're going to be able to remember a lot more in 2 or 3 days than you did immediately following the event. A lot of people don't understand that. They don't realize that. When I travel around and I teach classes at departments, I'm like, hey, when are you guys interviewing for officer-involved shootings? And I'm like, oh yeah, we do it the day of. And I'm like, stop doing that. I mean, you're only setting yourself up for failure. You're definitely setting the cop up for failure. Stop doing that. Give it at least 2-3 days to interview somebody. So I guess going back to the interview, once that's done with, you have to do a doctor's appointment with a psychologist, either a couple days later. So then you go to that, then the psychologist is like, hey, what happened? How do you feel? How did it make you feel? And, essentially they're just asking you, are you okay with it? And do you think you can go back to work? And if you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm good, then you're signed off to go back to work, and probably within a couple weeks you're back at it.
Yeah, the whole 30% thing, being able to only recall 30% of what actually might have happened. If there was video evidence of, let's say, someone filmed this entire. By the way, did the guy that filmed it with his phone, was that part of the investigation? Did you recover that guy's footage? And
yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure that was able to help corroborate the stories. But if let's say you had a 360 style footage of an entire police officer involved shooting, and that video was recovered, and then someone told you that only 30% of this video is what happened and 70% of it is made up, and it was real footage, you were watching it on screen, you would never use that to corroborate what happened in a shooting. It just, like, I feel like because memory, it's coming from inside our own heads, it seems so real, and we automatically just assume that because we picture something, it must have happened that way. We overestimate how reliable that memory can be. But if that was laid out on a video and you were watching on a screen, and your superior officer was watching that video and he knew that 70% of it was complete bullshit, he would be like, of course we can't use this, or of course this isn't reliable. We need to wait till we have a more reliable copy a few days later, or, you come back, you're less shook, hopefully, and you can better describe what happened.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's tough. I mean, you would think, like, oh, it just happened, I'm good to go. Like, I can remember exactly. Like, no, like, if you were to ask me in my second shooting I was in, there was an officer standing right behind me who actually fired his gun, and they asked me who was standing behind me and fired their gun, and I'm like, I have no idea. I had no idea someone was standing right behind me and shot their gun, because my brain blocked that out. Like, my brain didn't care about the guy behind me. It cared about the guy in front of me with a gun and trying to blow us up with homemade explosives. So I don't think there'll ever be a day where you can, like, strap a camera on a cop and get 360-degree coverage. I mean, I don't know how that'd be possible, because there's always going to be different angles that, like, a camera can't pick up. And that's kind of the dangerous thing with body cams and in-dash car cameras, right? Like, I might see my own eyes might see something different than what's on my chest, capturing from a camera lens. And that's the tricky thing with body cams, and sometimes gets guys in trouble is, hey, I'm telling you this, I saw this, but you go back and watch the body cam, and that's not what the body cam shows. So then people want to say, well, is the officer lying? Well, no, the officer might not be lying. It's just that they're seeing something different, right? Or if you are standing next to me, your perception angle is going to be different than mine, and whatever your camera is picking up is going to be different. There's a viral video out there. I'm sure you can find it. And it puts what we're talking about in perspective, where a guy's running from the cops. He's on foot. They're in their cars. They have in-car cameras. And at the time there wasn't body cams, but they have in-car cameras. And they jump out, and as they start to chase this guy in a parking lot on foot, you see him running, and then all of a sudden you see two cops shooting him in the back and killing him. And when you watch two of the car cameras, you're like, holy shit, they just murdered that guy. Like, they just shot him in the back and killed him. Okay. Well, here's what's interesting is if you watch a police in-car camera that came in from a slightly different angle than the other cars, it actually shows the guy with a gun in his hand, and he reaches back and he fires a round at the cops. Nobody else saw that. And they initially, before they saw this camera, I mean, I think they were accusing these guys of, like, basically murdering this dude. And when you watch those cameras, you're like, holy shit. Without that third car to actually capture that, it doesn't look good for them.
Yeah, they probably would have gotten charged with, if not murder, something pretty bad. That is a good possibility,
because now it's their word versus what are people seeing on the camera, and you don't see that on the camera at all. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's just,
and it's also compounded by the media too, because there are all multi-layered buildups to all of the shootings that occur.
Yeah.
And the context is completely stripped away, and usually it's just, you know, the bang bang 5 to 10 seconds where, you know, in a lot of situations I'm sure it's justified. There are a few where it looks like even with the context it was unjustified, but either way the full context is not being shown because of the nature of how information is shared, whether it's on, you know, mainstream corporatized media or something like TikTok and Instagram, where people just see the 5 seconds before the shooting, and then 5 seconds after, where if you watch the 10-minute video, you would see that there was entire buildup to it. You know, maybe the guy had a weapon, like you said, from another angle that you couldn't see in the video that's going viral. Maybe there was another person outside of the camera angle that was aggressing the cops that was affecting the situation. Like there's so much context that doesn't get shared. And I think the worst part is that it seems very intentional with the way these videos are edited together sometimes, that it's made to emotionally instigate the public to have a certain view of cops, when those people in the room know what they're doing. They can see, you know, they see the whole 20-minute video and they're giving someone orders to cut it down, make it look like this, make it look like that. And then boom, they share it. And then someone, you know, that's working a full-time job doesn't have time to watch the whole video. So they just see it, you know, come up on Instagram or CNN or whatever. And they're like, oh, that's so fucked up. Like, I can't believe the cops would do that. And then every single shooting looks like that. And then what I started to do is go on YouTube, look at the dash cam footage and actually see the buildup that happens to it. And it does really change your perspective on a lot of the shootings that have gone viral.
Yeah, it's funny. So like, I don't know, you would probably appreciate this because you have a YouTube channel and do content creating and stuff. And I was just listening to a podcast actually today before I came in here. And in 2023, it's all about short form content. That's what the consumer wants. You know, that's what TikTok, YouTube's pushing out with YouTube Shorts and all this stuff. Is the consumer or the viewer wants short content. And so that's what people are pushing out now. That's what media is pushing out. That's what social media platforms are pushing out, is this short form content. And so when you take a shooting, you're probably only going to get 15, maybe 10, 8 seconds of it. You're not getting the buildup. So you just said you yourself have to go back and watch the full buildup of it. How often do you think people are really doing that?
Not a lot. You got to take it upon yourself.
Not a whole lot. Yeah. So I think with all this short form content that's rolling out, you know, which is important obviously for people like you and I to build our brand up, to latch onto, but the problem with it is so many people are being fed with this short form content every single day, everywhere you look on social media, that, you know, you get these officer involved shootings and you're only going to get a blip of it. And whatever you see is going to be your reality. So, you know, they say like, hey, perception is reality. And that's not necessarily true, but it is going to be your reality. If you're scrolling through Instagram and you come across a shooting, which they like to post, and you're like, holy shit, you know, that didn't look good. And then that's all you're going to get, you know? So then now you're automatically assuming that it's bad. And then, you know, and then next thing you know, you're going to see a rally posted for said shooting. And you're like, well, I'm going to go to, you know, it just kind of fuels the fire a little bit. And like you said, man, like, yeah, people intentionally do stuff like that because it's going to build their narrative. It's going to, you know, get people to watch their media platform, whoever that is. And if that's a hot topic, then like they're going to build on that because that's what their job is. And that's going to get views. It's all about views. So dude, I think now more than ever, cops just have to be utterly careful and concise about what they do, how they speak to people, actions that they take at work. Sometimes you got to just walk away from stuff. Like even if it's, you know, this whole contempt of cop attitude thing, it's going to start to get a lot of cops in trouble, you know? This whole attitude of like, well, you have to do it because I'm the police. Well, not necessarily, not in today's day and age. Like there's a lot of times where we're walking away from shit that we would never walk away from before, for everything that we're talking about right now, because at the end of the day, it's not worth it.
Have you noticed cops walking around differently in the era of social media where everything is filmed, whether it's a traffic stop or you stop someone on the street. Have you noticed behavioral changes in the way that cops go about things?
Oh yeah. I see cops going out of their way to be extra, just to sound extra nice, because they know that they're being filmed. A lot of times you pull people over and they're recording you on their phone, or they'll put you on Instagram. I've had people throw me on Instagram Live.
Yeah, I've seen that. Instagram, Facebook Live, for sure.
Yeah, I've been tossed on that during a contact, and it's like, I'm always like, okay, that's fine, you can do that, whatever. But I'm also recording. I have a body cam, so we're recording.
Do you say shout out Shots Fired Podcast into the camera, like, follow? No. You should start doing that. Be like, yo, thank you for this opportunity. I just want to shout out to my podcast, my co-hosts.
Yeah, no, I don't. I try to. Yeah, at work, I don't even acknowledge. I try to keep that obviously separate from the crowd, which is funny because it's like people are like, "Oh man, you're like really putting yourself out there," and I'm like, at first I was pretty nervous about it, but now, I don't know. I think we had talked about it when we were recording last, but cops can't hide in the shadows all the time. Like, if people don't know what we do and the type of people that we are, like, how does anybody else have anything to go off of other than what they're going to see on social media or the news? Like, we do have to kind of put ourselves out there a little bit now and stop hiding in the shadows and just be real with people and show people that we have personalities. And look, the thing is with our podcast is it's all about, like, we're trying to educate other police officers so that they don't make bad decisions, to put themselves in a situation to either treat you poorly, make a bad choice, all of those things. So I don't know. That's what we're about.
Yeah. And we're lucky this day and age that, perspective is reality. And it used to be that the corporate media had a stranglehold on that perspective, but now independent platforms can come along and record podcasts, record videos. You don't just have to sit back and throw your hands up and go, well, but I guess this is how the world's going to see me. You can do what you're doing and be authentic, talk about your experiences, what you've done right, what you've done wrong, what you see going on in the industry that you're a part of. And people are starting to gravitate towards those independent first person point of views rather than seeing it filtered through 20 different, corporate layers to get to a mainstream story. And you just want to hear it straight from the source of the person that went through it.
Yeah, it's amazing what YouTube and social media has evolved into. And dude, you're right. You can literally be your own voice and own your own business and have it all on a free platform like YouTube and podcasting and social media. And what's crazy is you're starting to see a lot of police departments actually doing this on social media. So they're having camera crews or officers, they're training officers how to operate cameras as part of like a recruiting incentive or just to show like, hey, this is what we do. And they're riding around with cops and they're making these cool little videos. I don't know if you've seen them, but and they're putting them together and then they're putting them on social media or even on YouTube now. Some departments are starting their own YouTube channels and they're kind of expressing themselves as a department and putting it out there on on content. So it's evolving for sure. It'd be interesting to see in 5 years, where that goes. But, people like you and I that do have YouTube channels, like think about what that does for you, and the people that you've got to interact with and speak to and probably places that you've traveled to, all as a result of being able to produce your own content, do what you want, and then throw it on a platform like YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. I think people with certain niches are starting to realize what it can bring them, and they're kind of like evolving their own businesses on their own through content creation.
And I have seen some of those videos, the videos on your channel and videos that are day in the life of a cop patrolling XYZ area where you just see like a lot of the you probably assume that a lot of the tedious things that you do throughout the day aren't super interesting because you do them every single day. But for someone like me who's watching a day in the life video of a cop that never sees it at all, it's super engaging content. So I'm glad that sort of stuff is out there.
Yeah, I'm glad too. And hey, like I said, man, like I do think there's a fine line where like some of these cops on TikTok, you know, I personally think they're crossing the line, and it's like, okay, now you're kind of being unprofessional, and you're actually not doing us as a law enforcement community any favors. I do think that there is that line, and some people do cross it. You know, at the end of the day, we are professionals and we are public servants, you know, and that's what we signed up to do. And so I think you still have to behave within those boundaries. But I do think it's cool that more and more people or agencies are starting to get on board with what you're talking about and just show people like what we do every day. And like, yeah, like you said, we may think it's boring, but it's almost like you're getting to do a virtual ride along.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm just imagining a cop that takes it way too far on TikTok, where he busts into someone's home. Someone starts shooting at him, and then he tells the shooter, he's like, whoa, can you back up a little bit? The lighting's not great where you are right now. Yeah. Like, come in, let's roll this back, do it again. Like, come in this way and then shoot at me. Okay, I'm going to go back out and come in. All right, break.
Yeah, let's get some sweet B-roll.
Yeah. The guy's probably like, what the fuck?
Dude, yeah. You never know. Maybe a new generation cop might do that.
Yeah, exactly.
He's all, shit, all right, you're going to get my good side.
He's like, if this is going to be on the news, like, I want my fucking good side to be on the TikTok. When did you become a canine handler? Because I do want to get into that, because it's a big part of what you do. Was this after the shooting, the first shooting you were in, or when did that happen?
No. Yeah, so I was a canine handler when I got my first shooting. I got my end of 2013, I think. Yeah, or early 14. Got on the team, got my first dog, a little Belgian Malinois. Yeah, that really kind of kicked off my career in the direction that I'm where I am now. I mean, got on the SWAT team with the dog, got to do that, got a lot of cool SWAT deployments with the dog, apprehensions, just a lot of cool stuff, man. Like, a lot of cool stories. I'm very, very thankful for my time in canine and the things that I've got to do. You know, I've been a part of, calls where cops were killed, shot, getting to go hunt down people that do those things to cops. I mean, being in canine, you're the tip of the spear on all of these things. And so it was, man, it really jump-started my career for sure.
Was there a specific situation that made you want to become a canine handler, or was it always something that was on your mind?
No, so my old department, we didn't have dogs, didn't have a canine program, didn't know anything about them really. I was afraid of dogs. And then when I was on training at my new department, I was on a call. It was a robbery or something in progress, and we were at a 7-Eleven. We get there, the guy's still inside, and we surround the gas station, and ultimately he comes out, tries running, and there was a canine there, and he was actually, the dog and the handler were right behind me when we were taking cover on this building. And I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, this dog's going to bite me. Like, I was freaking out, honestly. And the handler's like, dude, stop worrying about the dog. Like, pay attention to what's going on. But I couldn't help myself. Like, I thought I was going to get bit. And so, yeah, the dog ends up catching this guy and biting him. And that was the moment where I'm like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. My heart was set on it. And after that, I went to the handlers and I'm like, hey guys, whatever I can do to get on the team, let me know. I'll do it. And I was going to trainings every week on my own time, 2 hours of sleep, catching dogs, like raising money for the unit. I was out there hustling for probably like 2.5 years. And then finally got on the team, tested. Yeah, I got my first dog, and then off to the races from there.
How long do dogs have to train before they become working canines?
I mean, it depends. I mean, it depends what you're looking for, but typically speaking, they try to raise, as puppies, they're raising these dogs to get to that level. So once they're there at around a year old, you know, we probably won't buy a dog that's less than a year old. These dogs are around $12,000 to $18,000. Once you get the dog, then you go to handler school, and that's a few months, learning how to be a handler, training the dog, you know, doing all these things. And then once you get out of handler school, for us, one of the senior handlers has to ride with you for about a month. And just make sure you're doing everything correctly. You got to think about this. I mean, you're paired up with an animal with its own brain that's trained to bite people. It's difficult. It's like the hardest job.
It's
in
like
law
having a guy
enforcement,
with.
is to be
It's
a
like
dog
having a
handler.
guy with on PCP on a leash, basically.
Dude, it's incredibly hard. So one small mistake could be pretty detrimental. I mean, you could get somebody seriously hurt. So, I mean, it's a lot of work. And then every week, once a week, you're training, your maintenance training all day. So a lot of training involved.
So you're in handler school. You said that lasted for about 2.5 years.
No, handler school is about 2 months.
Handler school is about 2 months, and you're witnessing the beauty, the power, precision of these dogs. Are there any moments you remember where you're watching a dog do something that you didn't realize it could do, and you're just like, holy fuck, like this shit is crazy. I did not know that dogs were capable of this.
Oh yeah. I mean, you get the right dog with the right amount of drive. I mean, yeah, I mean, my second dog, my last shooting I was in, tried shooting my dog point blank in the face, and he came back for more. So to see a dog do something like that, I mean, that is pretty incredible. I mean, the determination that they have and the drive, it's pretty wild.
And you said your first dog was a Belgian.
A Belgian Malinois. So very common in the military. That's that tan with the black face.
Got it.
They look like shepherds. They're very, very common in military and police.
Guy or girl?
It was a boy. Yeah. Dax.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time that you, or whether it was the first time or just like a standout time that Dax had to bite someone that was just like left an impact on you? Like you just a situation where if Dax wasn't there, maybe someone could have died or things would have gone vastly different. And it was a good bite. Like you were like, damn, that was fucking good job, Dax.
Yeah. I had a lot of good apprehensions with him, but one that probably stands out that I think he saved this guy's life was a guy barricaded in a bathroom at a gas station. He was wanted out of a different state, I think Oregon or something. And ultimately, as time went on, the decision came down to we were going to breach the door and launch the dog in there. So when that time came, we did that. We breached the door. I launched Dax into this bathroom, and as we breached it and I launched him, we illuminated it with a flashlight, and I see the guy, and he's standing in the bathroom. He's got a knife in his hand, and he's literally holding it up like this. And I mean, all of this happened at the same time, and I had already sent the dog. And as my brain is like processing what I'm seeing, I mean, he just boom hits this guy, like the knife flies out of his hands, knocks him on his back, and we're able to rush in and quickly grab a hold of him. And after that, I was like, holy shit. If the dog wasn't there, one of us is probably getting stabbed, and we're definitely probably shooting and killing.
It was
that
a pretty
guy.
close space. The guy was just right up on you.
It was close. Yeah, he's right by the door. We're kind of near the door. It was like in this little bathroom hallway at a gas station. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of room. It just worked out. If the dog wasn't there, I'm certain that would have been a completely different outcome.
In that situation, Dax is, I'm assuming, not on a leash, obviously, because he has to go.
No.
So is he standing next to you, or is he in front of you in that situation? And what do you actually say or do to get the dog to launch? What's the command sequence?
So in a situation like that, I would just have a hold of him on his collar or his harness with no leash on him. And, you do scenarios like this with the dog. So it'd be like breach, send, whatever. So the dog has seen the picture before, but generally speaking, you're going to breach the door. He's going to get target locked now on the suspect. He's going to see him, and then you're going to give him his bite command, and the dog knows. Shit, honestly, you probably didn't have to give him his bite command. He knows, like, it's on. All you have to do is let go of him, and he's going to do his job.
So you don't even have to say anything. You just let go and just fucking, you don't have to say get him or whatever you decide to yell, like hut hut.
Yeah, well, Yeah. I'm all right, hike. No.
Go long, bitch.
No, it's, yeah. No, the hype's already built up in the dog. Like, especially when they've done it, they got, street cred and they've done this before. I mean, they know what to do.
Where did Dex hit the guy? Does he go straight chest? Like, just like you're rushing someone, bum rushing, basically?
Yeah, he hit him right here in the shoulder pocket in the same arm that he had the knife in. And obviously the dude didn't see that.
Is that on
coming.
purpose? That he went for the arm with the knife?
Yeah, we target. Yeah, in training, you target, pockets, a dog to target on a decoy. But, in real life, it's like, unless someone's standing there, like in training a decoy would be, which this guy happened to be, the dog more than likely is going to target there. But I mean, if you're hiding or whatever body part is exposed, the dog is going to latch onto. But yeah, in this case, I mean, he just bam hits him in the shoulder pocket, and the knife just like flies out of his hand, and I was just like, holy shit. So that was kind of
how much does an average bite from a dog like Dex do? What's the damage on that?
It just depends. You get dogs that just kind of latch on and they, bite and just not let go. And so you get some punctures, I mean, there's other times where, it depends what the bad guy's doing. If he's trying to fight with your dog, if, a lot of times they'll try to rip your dog off of them. And, you're going to get more serious, damage from that. But generally speaking, the dogs are just trained to bite and just hold on. So that's what we want from them.
And so let's say it's a situation where the guy doesn't jump out of the door immediately and start to try to stab you. Let's say a guy's holed up somewhere and you actually have some space. Do you yell to the guy, if you don't come out, if you don't drop your weapon, we're sending in this fucking dog?
100%.
Or it's kind of like a surprise attack?
No, the dog's coming. I mean, it's in our policy. Like, you have to give canine announcements. Several canine announcements. I mean, it's a no surprise the dog is there. The dog's barking, probably. You're definitely giving commands. You're giving people the opportunity to surrender. After whatever the circumstance is, whatever period of time has gone by, and it's time to deploy the dog. I mean, even in an outdoor search, like hypothetically, if you don't even know where the person is, you're still giving your commands. Like, hey, we know you're out here. We're going to search for the dog. If he finds you, he's going to bite you, right? You're telling him that. You're giving PAs from the helicopter. Ground units are giving PA announcements over their intercoms on their cars. I mean, like, it's well known that the dog is there and going to be searching. But even as we're searching, you might go into a backyard or whatever. Your dog might hit on a shed. You're then going to call the dog back to you, and then even give more announcements like, hey, we know you're in the shed. Like, you need to come out. If you don't, the dog is going to go in there, like, bite you, all these things. And it's when the people don't surrender. I mean, those are the people that are going to get bit, but you can't say you didn't know the dog wasn't there. I mean, the only time you're not going to do that is if it's such a severe circumstance where someone is armed and they've committed some type of violent act of violence, where you're trying to be stealthy about your approach because you don't want to get seriously injured or killed, and you're going to not give any announcements, and you're just going to send the dog out there to go find this person. But those are rare circumstances, I mean, those are up there in like the lethality range.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, if I'm already committing a crime, or if I'm in the process of committing a crime, and the cops are saying that they're going to send a dog in, I've seen the video, so like I know what a dog bite can do. But if I've never seen those and a cop just says the word dog, to me, that might go over my head. I might be like, fuck that, like, send in a dog. Who gives a shit? Like, a dog on its own doesn't sound that intimidating. If if you're used to dealing with weapons and probably getting in physical altercations, you're like, what the fuck is a dog going to do to me? And then I watch some of these videos and my reaction is just, holy shit. My arm, my entire bicep would get ripped off in some of these situations, take a chunk out of your leg. Like, I'm sure a lot of guys have, regrets of, like, I'm so sorry. Totally. Like, do guys ever say to you, like, oh, yeah, I fucked up, I should have just came out? Like, my arm's missing.
Almost 100% of the time. But the thing to remember, I think too, is you're only sending a dog out to allow them to bite somebody, and in the rarest of occasions, meaning that a violent crime has already occurred and you need to go find this person, and they're either concealing or hiding themselves and they're refusing to surrender, and you have to go find this person. And the only, well, I shouldn't say the only way, but the best way to, for the odds of you finding this person and giving yourself distance to not get hurt or killed, or even have to kill this person potentially, is using the thing that has the best nose to be able to sniff you out and safely find you. And those are after, like I said, all the announcements have been given, like you've already met the threshold of being able to use a dog. There are rare occasions, but when those occasions happen, I mean, a dog is one of the best tools to be able to do that for everybody's safety.
Yeah, it's like having a heat-seeking miniature great white shark or something. Like you just fucking send it into a room and de-escalates the violence, or like you said, could save human lives in a situation where, otherwise someone probably would have got stabbed or shot.
Yeah, and that's just it, man. I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, did you want to get bit by a dog, or did you want to get, shot? Like, seriously. I mean, I can't tell you how many times a dog has found somebody and they're armed, or they still have the gun on them. Like, you send a human in there and it might be a different outcome, so I'll take the odds of getting bit by a dog than getting shot. Like, that's just the reality of it. So, but I mean, like I said, there are those circumstances where, like, it's up there.
Did you see this bill that's up for vote in California about banning the police dogs from arrests?
Yeah, I did. We did a podcast on that. I did. Yeah, I know about that, and I don't think it'll pass. The argument's pretty weak. They're throwing out stats without having any numbers or stats.
Yeah,
so they were saying blacks and browns are disproportionately bit, and I don't know where you get those numbers from. I mean, and the fact is
yeah, like
actually,
insinuating that dogs are racist, like somehow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they actually cite not being able to use the dogs in riot control. Dude, we haven't done that since the 50s. Like, they used to do that back in the 50s, but during civil rights era. But we don't do that. We don't use dogs for crowd control. I mean, we don't even allow dogs to go in any type of riots or crowding control. But if you pull the numbers from departments, it's like less than 1% of actually dogs actually biting somebody. So of the hundreds of canine deployments let's just say a busy department, hundreds of deployments a year, you're probably only going to get a handful of actual dog bites from those. So, like, the percentage rate is so low.
Yeah. I just wanted to read some of this article for people who aren't familiar with it, but I can't remember if this is from The Guardian. I think it was, but it's called "California Bill Would Ban Police Dogs from Arrests and Crowd Control, Citing Racial Trauma." Yeah. And it says, 2 California lawmakers have introduced a bill that would ban the use of police canines for arrests, apprehensions, and crowd control, saying officers have long targeted and brutalized Americans of color with police dogs. Assembly members Corey Jackson and Ash Kalra introduced AB 742 to, quote, end a deeply racialized and harmful practice that has been a mainstay in America's history of racial bias and violence against Black Americans and people of color, according to a news release. The use of police canines has inflicted brutal violence and lifelong trauma on Black Americans and communities of color, Jackson said in the release. This bill marks a turning point in the fight to end this cruel and inhumane practice and build trust between the police and the communities they serve. And going off of what you said, if you're only using dogs in situations where a violent crime has already been committed or in the act of being committed, would you rather someone send a dog on you, or would you rather police come into your house with guns and settle it that way? So in my view, if I'm given those options, while the dog may bite you, that's the nicer, less lethal option than police just barging in and maybe you react in a way that you wouldn't, that gets you killed. Whereas if a dog rushes in, it just takes you down and the police can apprehend you.
Yeah. So let's think. Okay. So let's think about this for a second. Number one, you're talking about the severity of the crime. Okay. It has to be high. You got to have a violent crime attached to it. The person's not willing or wanting to give up after several announcements that have been made. So you have those two things. And then you got to factor in what is the danger to the public and to the officers if that person's not immediately apprehended. In other words, do you want, these criminals hiding in your backyard, potentially breaking into your house, which happens a lot? All these things that potentially could happen, that do happen if you take the dogs away. I mean, you're left with, you're just limiting the options of less lethal to use on these people. And like you said, it could turn into a now lethal encounter when it didn't have to. Now, and speaking of demographics, if you work in an area or live in an area where the demographics are, 70% black, and that demographic are committing the crime because that's just what the demographics are, then of course that's just who you're dealing with more often. I mean, so I think you really got to break down cities, demographics, and actually true hard numbers of dog deployments and dog bites. I mean, if you really break those numbers down, I think people would be, it would shut that down real quick.
I'm just going to take a piss real quick. And then I want to ask you about the most recent shooting before we wrap up.
Yep. No worries.
So the most recent shooting you were in, you said you had a dog with you on that shooting too, where it almost the guy or guys, I don't know how many people it was, but shot your dog at point blank or tried to shoot your dog.
Yeah, and shot me.
And shot you. Was that Dax, the same dog that you had on the knife call?
No, this is Axel, my second dog, which I still have him at home.
What breed?
He's a German Shepherd, just an all black German Shepherd.
German Shepherd, Axel. How did this shooting go down, and where did it happen?
So so I had actually just got to work, and I responded to an alarm call. Basically, a couple patrol guys went to an alarm call, showed up. Some dude is like coming out of this business, like, they thought he's burglarizing it, and then goes back inside.
So commercial alarm then? Okay.
Yeah. Commercial building. It's July 7:00 at night. And so obviously the sun is still out. It's daytime hours. And my buddy, who had mentioned that was in the first shooting with me, Nate, he was also a dog handler, and he responded over to this alarm call where this guy was inside. So I go over there to help out, and it was his turn to deploy the dog. And so I'm like, hey, I'll just go to the back while he took his search team inside to go find this guy. And I brought a brand new officer with me, Joe. Joe's his name. He had just got off training that week. So he's like brand
so
new.
not a ride along. He's in it.
No, this is an actual cop, yeah.
Fresh off of ride along.
He's in it, yeah. Yep, he works for us. So, but he's fresh off training. Okay. And so I grab him and I'm like, hey, dude, let's go to the backup in case this dude squirts out the back. We'll be back there with my dog, Axel. And I'm just talking to him while they're doing the search. I'm like, basically, here's how you work around a dog. This is how you not get bit by the dog, kind of going over that with him. And dispatch airs over the radio. They're like, hey, we're getting reports of, possible shots fired in the mall parking lot. Well, the mall parking lot was literally right across the street from where we were. So all I had to do was cross one major roadway, and I'm in the parking lot of the mall. And the call was so vague. It was like, the caller wasn't sure if it was a gun. It could have been a cell phone that he put in his pocket. It was like, really? But they heard what sounded like a gunshot. So, they give a description of him. It was a white male, backpack, black and white striped shirt. So a little bit of time goes on, and I'm like, you know what? This is in 2019. I'm like, with all the mass shootings and everything that had been going on, I'm like, we should probably go to this call, because if it ends up being something, we don't want to not go to that, right? So I told Joe, I was like, hey, you want to go with me? And he's like, yeah, we'll go over there. So I radioed to Nate or whatever. He's just finishing up the search too. They couldn't find this guy. And I'm like, hey, dude, we're going to go to this call. And he's like, yeah, cool. We're wrapping this up. We'll be over there in a minute. So Joe and I drive across, we cross the street. We're in the parking lot. And I'm driving and I'm reading the text of the call. And I look up and I see the guy, and he's on the freaking other end of the mall parking lot, but he's like sprinting, full sprint towards this JCPenney store. And in my head, I thought, well, that's super weird that it's freaking August, or I'm sorry, July. It's hot as hell out. He had this like long sleeve shirt on with a backpack, and he's full sprint.
This dude's not just working out in the middle of a JCPenney parking lot.
No, absolutely not. So I'm like, that's really weird. And my initial thought was, I don't want him to get in the mall because I don't want to have to chase this guy through the mall. Like we've had to do that before, and that's a nightmare. So we throw on our lights and sirens to distract him, and it actually ends up working. He actually looks up, he sees us now. He's still quite a distance ahead of us. And he turns around, and now he's running the opposite way that he came. And so at the one end of the mall parking lot, there was a Red Robin restaurant, a tire shop, and some other businesses. And he's running towards those businesses. Well, I'm like maneuvering in my car trying to catch up with him. Joe's behind me, and he ends up running out onto a major roadway, and he's kind of just like jogging down the sidewalk. And I pull out on the roadway, and he's not stopping. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to use my car. I'll cut him off, get out of the car, and go from there. And I'd already, based on the call, and I was getting more information, another caller had called in and said that they were almost certain that they saw him had a gun. He had put it in his pocket and whatever. So I'd already gone through my mental checklist of like, am I going to deploy my dog Axel on this guy if he doesn't stop running? And I'd already made up my mind that I was, just based on the circumstance. So it was really weird. He's on the sidewalk. I cut him off with my car. I get out, and I always was good about using my car as cover between me and another person. And luckily I did that. So I get out of my car, and I'm like, hey dude. And he stops, and he's just like, gives me this like 1,000-mile look, stare on his face, which immediately was like a red flag to me. And I'm like, hey, get down on the ground. And I got my gun out, and he doesn't do anything. He just stares at me for a minute. And I'm like, hey, get down on the ground, dude. You're going to get bit by the dog. And he's just staring at me.
So is he moving or anything when he's staring at you? Like literally just a stone cold stare?
No. Just a stone cold stare like that. Have you ever looked at someone and they just have that like 1,000-mile stare look on their face where they're like looking through you?
Yeah, like there's nothing behind their eyes. They're just,
There's nothing there. Yeah, and so he's looking at me like that, and which made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I'm like, okay, what the hell? This probably only happened for probably 3 to 5 seconds. And then without even saying anything, he just turns and starts running back the opposite direction that he just came. So I circle around the car, I get the dog out, and I'm yelling at him, stop, he's going to get bit. And I deploy Axel because he doesn't stop. So right as I deploy the dog, and this is all on video, as I deploy the dog, Axel's now closing the gap on him. I see the guy. I'm now running behind the dog. And mind you, we're on the sidewalk. Joe now, he's getting out of his car. And as the dog goes to bite him, he pulls a .357 Magnum out of his front waistband. And he turns back towards me, and he starts firing the gun. And one of the first rounds that he fired, I think it hit the sidewalk and ricochets up and hit me in the vest. But nonetheless, it hits me in the vest on my left side of my ribs. I feel that, which, felt like somebody punched you like super hard in the rib cage. So I think in my mind, I knew what had just happened, that I had been hit. But I'm now shooting back at this guy.
And you're wearing a vest?
The dog now, I'm wearing a vest. Yeah, luckily. the dog goes to bite him at this point. He sees the dog, and as Axel goes to bite him in the arm, he point blank just boom fires a round right at his face, and like the dog goes backwards out into traffic, and I completely lose sight of him. And in the moment, I thought, holy shit, he just killed my dog. Like, there's a lot of things going through my mind. Like I got really sad. Like I thought I just got my dog killed. I mean, those dogs are like your kids.
And you might have just been shot.
Yeah. And honestly, that wasn't even going through my mind. I couldn't believe that he just killed my dog. And so I'm still firing at him. And I'm lucky the dog was there because I could tell his change of behavior. The suspect, he was more concerned about getting bit by the dog than he was being shot. And one of my rounds, actually in the video, you see it hits him in the backpack. And I remember seeing this in real life. Like I saw this like big poof of like, it ended up being water, but like this spray of something. And I thought I had hit him, but he ends up circling around. And then now he's running up this like dirt embankment towards this tire shop.
Was he wearing like it was like a protein shaker bottle or something that you hit?
Yeah, dude. It was a metal
water canister. Yeah.
The freaking bullet hit it and it deflected the round and it completely blew the water canister up. So what you see in the video is all the water spraying out.
Bam.
It's kind of
crazy. You see this dude, you nailed him in the back and you're just like, fuck, metal on metal just deflected it. Yeah. So now he's running.
He's still running. He's still shooting. I have zero cover. There's no cover to take. I am in the wide open. So I see as he's running up this dirt embankment, I'm still firing at him. Joe now has basically caught up with me and he's starting to now fire at him. And out of nowhere, I see my dog in my peripheral and this like white or this like black blurb just in my peripheral and jump up and bite this guy behind some bushes. And he grabs him by the calf and he yanks this dude down. And now I lose sight of him because they're behind these bushes. And I'm like, I think in my head, I was like, holy shit, was that my dog? And I now run up to the guy and I see Axel's biting him in the leg. And the dude sits up in a seated position. And I'm now within probably 3 or 4 feet of the guy. And I'm like, I'm still shooting. And then, so now in that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to fucking shoot my dog now because now the dog is on the dude and he sits up and he points the gun right at me. And I remember like looking at that barrel and in my mind, I'm like, God, fuck, that's a big gun. Like I'm going to get shot. I thought for sure like that was it for me. I'm like, yeah, he's going to kill me. And, I'm going to have to shoot and kill my dog and try to put this guy down. Which was tough because, like I said, I initially thought the dog was dead already. Now he's back. Now he's biting the guy. And having to kill your own dog, that's not ideal. That's actually a hard thing to grasp in your own head. So I'm like, whatever. I start shooting at him. He fires one round, and I remember it being like super loud and like feeling the percussion of this .357 Magnum. And the round goes like past my head and blows out the window behind me. And he freaking shoots another round, which also goes by my head and hits the side of the building. And luckily, my shots were effective, hit him. He goes down. I run, another patrol car pulls up right at this time. And I run out in the street. I'm out of ammo. I take cover behind the patrol car. The dog's still biting him. I think I've shot the dog now because now I can't even see him. He's behind the bushes. I'm yelling at the dog. He's not coming back. So I'm like, okay, he's dead. I reload my gun. And as I take cover behind the car, I can still see the guy. I can probably see like maybe his stomach up. And he still has the gun in his hand and he's still like maneuvering around. So I shoot another round, which goes off, and then my gun goes click, and which is not a good sound in a gunfight when your gun goes click and not bang. So I quickly do, like the whole, my gun's jammed. So I do the whole tap rack, get back in battery. and I was able to end up firing a couple more rounds. And now I don't see the guy. Now he's not moving at all. I still can't see my dog. He's still not coming back. I tell Joe, I'm like, fuck, the dog's dead. We're trying to get resources there. Obviously, we're putting all this out on the radio. And I have my e-collar on my the remote on my belt, and I'm just sitting there. I'm hitting the E to try to get access.
So it's a shock thing?
Yeah, he's got an e-collar on his neck. And so I'm trying to hit that. I'm trying to get him to come back, and he's not coming back. And so, I'm just thinking the worst. And I tell Joe that, and I'm like, shit, but we don't want to run up to this guy because I don't know what his status is. And I don't know, I bet you probably 30 seconds, 45 seconds goes by, which seemed like an eternity. And you can see in the video, Axel comes out from behind the bushes and like, dude, his tail is like, his tail's tucked down, his ears are kind of down, and he's like kind of like doing this like gait, and you could tell that he's freaking wigged out. And I'm like, oh my God, he's alive. So I quickly call him over to me. I grab him, and he's just like covered in blood. So then I'm thinking, okay, he's shot, but he's not dead. The other handler, Nate, now he's on scene, and I'm like, dude, we got to get him to the vet. But before I do that, I now started thinking about myself and getting hit. And when I thought about that, when I had Axel, and now I'm like, holy shit, I was hit. And I look down and I can see this big hole in my my uniform shirt. My stomach sank. Like, I don't know. I was like, holy fuck, am I dying? Like, how bad am I hurt? I wasn't feeling anything really. And I've heard of horror stories of guys getting shot and they don't even know that they're shot, but like, you can still die. And so so then I'm thinking the worst. So I start ripping my uniform off. My vest is shredded, and the round that hit me ends up falling on the ground, and the vest had stopped it. So I was like, holy shit, I'm good. Like, I take my vest off. I'm like checking myself. I had a partner there. They're checking me. And it was at that point where I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like, I need to get the dog to the vet because I didn't want him to die. So we end up throwing him in my car. Nate drove. We left his car and dog there. And yeah, we freaking blasted off to the vet, gave him a forewarning that we were coming. We showed up and they scanned the dog, and the vet was like, hey, he wasn't hit. Or he had an injury to his muzzle. It took like a chunk of his skin and like burned his muzzle. And I think that was from the first round the guy shot at him point blank. I think the round skimmed off his nose and it burned his face.
Wow. So he somehow he just like, missed, like, yeah.
Just got super lucky, dude. Like, that guy failed in every way that day. He couldn't kill the dog. He couldn't kill me. Like, I would chalk that up to being a failure.
And he's dead. Biggest fail.
And he's,
or did he die?
He ended up, dying. Yeah, he died on scene. So they tell me he wasn't shot, and I go, and I'm like argumentative. I'm like, no bullshit. I'm like, check him again. I wasn't believing her. They did. And she's like, hey, I think the blood that's on him is from the bad guy. And I'm like, fuck. I was like, holy crap. Just if all the stars could have lined up that day, I think everything worked out in our favor. I mean, I probably should be dead, to be honest. The guy shot at me point blank from just a few feet away twice.
So when he missed and one shot hit the window and the other shot hit the building, he was like 3 feet away from you, 4 feet away from you.
Oh yeah. Yep. And just seated down, and yeah, just cranked off a couple rounds at me. So for sure got lucky. But and I've had people ask like, oh, why did you run up, and shoot, get that close to him? And it's like, well, I had nowhere else to go. And it's like, dude, he's just like aimlessly firing his gun. He almost shot an innocent citizen in her car. Something had to be done. And, the only way to do that is to bring the fight to him. So that's just what I did. But I ended up going to the hospital after that. Because I had to go make sure that I was okay. So they gave me my freaking heart rate, I guess, was so high that they had to like give me some drugs to bring it down because it was like spiking and they were concerned. But And that was actually the last day. One of my buddies who worked at a neighboring agency heard this all come out. He happened to be working. He showed up at the hospital, and I remember hearing his voice in the hall, like, "Where's my buddy?" He thought I was, he thought I was seriously hurt. And the nurse is like, "Hey, you can't go in there." And dude, there's like media that starts to show up to stuff like that. Like, so they don't want anybody in there, and to protect me. And I heard my buddy's voice. He's basically told the nurse to go fuck herself. He's like, "No, I'm going in there. That's my friend." And I grew up with this guy. So he hung out in the hospital with me. He actually called my parents. I was there for a couple hours. He hung out. We parted ways. He was like, "Yeah, let's get a drink after, sometime this week." Like, he's like, "Dude, you're fucking crazy. Like, how does this always happen to you?" And he ended up taking his life 7 days to the day of that shooting. He died.
He was on the force, or he was just a friend from.
He was a police officer. He worked at a neighboring agency. Yeah, than where I worked. So that whole event was, I don't think I ever really had time to process even what really happened to me that day, because when he died, I mean, all my energy, I think, went to that.
Yeah. I mean,
so that whole scenario I feel like I can't ever tell that story without sharing that part of it, because to me, like, that's a part of the story. Like, that's the last day I saw him. We spoke on the phone the day that he died. We were supposed to hang out, and it didn't work out for reasons. So yeah, to me, man, like, that whole situation is like balled up into one story for me.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that you didn't have time to process the shooting, because it's two completely traumatic events happening within a week of each other. I don't know if the human brain has the ability to pay equal enough or full enough attention to two events like that normally most people don't even experience, and it's happening within 7 days. So like that's completely wild. And
yeah. The shooting was on a Tuesday, and that following Tuesday is when he took his life. I was actually supposed to go to to the debrief for my shooting the day that I found out at like 6 o'clock in the morning, when another one of our close friends was just blowing my phone up, woke me up and told me what had happened, which obviously I was devastated. And so I never even got to go to the debrief with everybody that was involved in that, because I was just so like emotionally just distraught in dealing with his death. That like, to me, dude, I don't think I've ever had like closure in that whole thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Wow.
So
and that was your fourth shooting? Fourth and most recent shooting.
Fourth shooting. That was in. Yeah.
So in terms of debriefing, apart from the debriefing, are you taking time off in between or after these shootings, or like, because I would think that like the human body and mind just needs time away from work to be able to process, what the fuck just happened to you, especially the fourth time.
Yeah. After my third shooting, I took 6 months off, and I did EMDR therapy and kind of trying to find my way, because it was, I was struggling with it. And once I was able to kind of get better myself, I did the therapy, ended up going back to work. And then within a few months, I was involved in that fourth shooting. So I'm glad I did the therapy, because it helped me process, my emotions after the fact. And that guy that we were in the shooting with, he was only, I think 23 years old. He actually had gone to the mall to kill his girlfriend, and luckily she wasn't there. And that's kind of what sparked the whole thing.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, he actually shot. So he did shoot. He shot inside Macy's. Luckily it didn't hit anybody, and the round lodged in the jewelry cabinet, I think. But yeah, when my buddy Cam died, I was originally going to go back to work. And then when that happened, my chief was super cool and supportive, and they knew what was going on. And I think they gave me like a couple months. I took a couple months to myself. And here's the thing, man, like the problem with taking time like that to yourself is, do you sit at home and dwell on it and constantly think about it, or is going back to work healthy because you're keeping busy? I kind of wanted to be removed from that type of environment for a little bit. So what I did was I wanted to remodel my spare bathroom in my house, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And dude, I fucking tore my bathroom down to the studs and remodeled the entire thing from floor to ceiling, not knowing how to do any of that shit. But I did it to buy myself time and keep myself busy. And I finished it. And, I guess as weird, as odd as this sounds, like I think like finishing the remodel of my bathroom and kind of, I don't know, tied up loose ends for me. Like I finished it, and then it was like, all right, I'm done with this. I wanted to go back to work after that. So I ended up going back to work.
Yeah. I feel like you need something to occupy your mind in those aftermath moments of a traumatic experience. Like doing nothing, I feel like is almost as bad as going back to the same exact situation. So it seems like a pretty smart move that you decided to fill your time with something, especially hands-on too, where it occupies your body and your mind. You have to fully sink into it to be able to complete it.
It was a lot of work.
So the EMDR, is that the eye movement stuff, like eye movement therapy?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, what?
A lot of military guys use it. It's to treat post-trauma. It's a post-trauma type therapy. And, you know, I guess the nuts and bolts of it is it's, you know, your brain stores traumatic things that occur in your life in one part of your brain, and it stores the good things that happen in your life. And that's why you can recount traumatic incidents in your life, and you can recount obviously good times in your life. And basically what it does is it stimulates your brain and nerves in your brain, and it gets those two to kind of communicate with each other because they don't talk to each other. So it enables that to happen. And through the therapy and stimulating your brain, it treats the post-trauma. So you're not constantly thinking about the negative side effects of whatever it is that you were involved in.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm just trying to imagine what the session would be like. So you're doing different eye movements. Do you have targets to focus on, or what's the thing that you're paying attention to?
So eye movements is just one part of it. It could be eye movements, or it could be bilateral stimulation. So like, you know, tapping on your shoulders or your legs one at a time. So left, right. You're basically some type of stimulation to activate the left and the right side of your brain.
So you're just trying to get like cross-firing,
not doing
something.
Yeah, basically. So like you could be listening to music, soft music, and it'll only play in one ear at a time. And by doing that, you're stimulating your left and right side of your brain.
And you're talking while you're doing this? So you're talking through the events, or it's separate?
No, the therapist is doing a lot of the talking, having you recount. You know, you're kind of closing your eyes. You're doing the stimulation. Sometimes you hold paddles in your hand and they vibrate one at a time. And while that's happening, you know, close your eyes and you start to think about the incident that happened, whatever it is. You know, what were the bad things? What were the good things that came of it? And then before you shut the stimulation off, you overlay the positive on top of the negative, and then they stop the stimulation, and then your nerves shut down, and you're basically just overlaid all the positive on top of the negative. I know it sounds kind of crazy, dude. Like I explain it to people and they're like, oh, it sounds like fucking sci-fi crap, right? And I thought that too. Sorry, I keep bumping my camera. I thought that too, but after going through it, dude, it changed me. Like I was having severe nightmares, severe anxiety. I think some depression, dude, you name it. And I was experiencing it and hiding it from people. And she told me when I went in there, she's like, I will fix you. And I'm like, yeah, right. Well, it worked. And no more nightmares, reduce my anxiety, severely reduce my stress. The only side effects I think I still have is when I hear like a loud noise and I'm not expecting it, it startles me. and that was just something she could never take away. But I still get startled by a loud noise.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound like witchcraft at all. And I'm not smart enough to know about the actual neurological processes that are going on in your brain, but it makes sense that having something physical attached to the emotional or traumatic experience might lessen the triggerings involved with reimagining that experience, or being able to help you process it better. Because I read this book a long time ago called The DARE Approach to Anxiety. And
it's a good name for it.
And one of I forget what it's called. I should look up the acronyms again. But the last one, the E in DARE, stands for engage. If like all else fails and you're mid panic attack, do something physical. It doesn't matter what it is. Like you're freaking out, you think you're going to die. Do something that involves any sort of physical activity, whether it's your eyes moving, reading a book, or you're working out, you're going for a run, doing push-ups, whatever. Like give your mind something physical to latch onto, and for whatever reason that helps make it more manageable. It doesn't take away the anxiety attack, but it for me, like even on a plane, like I remember having anxiety attacks on a plane, which in no way I'm comparing being on a plane to being in a gunfight, obviously, but just being mid panic attack and just like tapping my foot on the floor and just kind of like counting the taps gives me something.
Yeah, so that's a form of EMDR.
Okay,
right
yeah,
there.
that's like something I've done from it. So the DARE approach to anxiety, by the way, it's diffuse, allow, run toward, engage. So you try to diffuse the anxiety. If that doesn't work, you just like, all right, this is happening. You accept it. Then I remember one of the things with run towards is for example, if you feel like your throat is closing up, and I actually did this on a plane, you ask your throat to close up. And by doing that, you essentially take the power away from the anxiety, because you can't, unless you're having an actual allergic reaction, like you asking your throat to close up and stopping breathing is not actually going to happen. So it like signals to you that your body can't actually kill you. Like your mind just makes it feel like a threat. And then if that fails, then the engage, you do a physical activity, like do something. So I remember being on a plane and like tapping my foot back and forth, just like counting the taps, and that helped me kind of do it. So that makes sense. Like not even knowing nothing about the EMDR, like that's kind of a go-to for me without the therapy part, just like the physical motions. So it makes sense that if you combine that with therapy, that it would help make things more manageable and lessen the severity of the trauma.
Yeah. If it ever happens, you can tap your feet left, right, or tap your legs, one at a time. So that is a form of is EMDR therapy. So it's kind of my journey.
Yeah, no, and again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I really appreciate it. And this has been a wild episode, part 1 and part 2 included. And I love talking to people that have different experiences than me and more traumatic and potentially lethal experiences, because it also gives me a reality check how good my life is, because I'm not encountering things like that, whether it's on a monthly, yearly, or it happens 4 times in your life. For most people, it never happens. So to hear people like you be able to talk about it and process it gives me perspective on what it may be like, just like a small slice of, like there are people out there that are willing to put themselves at this risk and handle these sorts of problems. And there's a lot of baggage that comes along with that. So I appreciate you sharing everything that you did. Yeah,
absolutely, man. It gives me an appreciation for honestly for everybody and what they do and work. A lot of people say like, oh man, I couldn't do what you do. And it's like, well, maybe, but I also couldn't be the guy that drives around at 4:00 in the morning and takes your trash out, right? The guy, the trash collector, you know, I appreciate that guy or gal who does that for work, because I don't want to do that. But somebody does it. And so just kind of, when you look at it like that, I think it just gives you an appreciation for everybody and for what we all do for a living. You know, that's what makes the world go around, right?
So where can people check you out? I know you have the Shots Fired podcast, which, by the way, I checked out the Uvalde episode. That was one of the first ones I clicked on, and that whole breakdown is fascinating. So people can go check that out. But where can they check out the podcast, social media? I know you have this Surviving Deadly Encounters course too. People can go check that out as well.
Yeah, so you can find me, you can find our YouTube channel, Shots Fired Podcast on YouTube. We're on all audio platforms. So we do that. That's been quite successful for us. You can find us on Instagram. Shots Fired Podcast Official is our Instagram page. And then you can find me on Instagram, Kyle _Shoberg. And then, I own my separate training business, Field Survival Training. And basically, I just, get to have the opportunity to travel around all over the country, speak at different law enforcement agencies, do trainings, be a guest speaker. I've been a keynote speaker at several big events. So that's all cool stuff. You can go to fieldsurvivaltraining.com if you want to check that out. We offer a couple different classes, but yeah, those are the main platforms I operate on, and just trying to build and grow those. So I guess if anybody's listening who's interested and you want to check it out, we're actually in the process of starting our Patreon.
Oh, hell yeah.
And that's going to be a cool platform, what we're working on, so that, we get a ton of emails, man, and like messages from guys, cops all over. And they're like, hey, asking advice or questions or whatever. So we're kind of like packaging that all up and Patreon, and for like super cheap subscriptions, we're going to do video chats with guys and offer one-on-one coaching.
That's where, I was going to say, that's where you put the day in the life videos, or you strap a GoPro to Axel and put like a bite footage compilation on Patreon.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to come see some cool content, you can come over to Patreon. But yeah, it's just a good way, I think, to teach and reach people on a whole new level, where in person, it's you got to be there, right? So online, that's kind of the way of the future right now. And so yeah, we're trying to package that all up and get that out. We're going to roll that out here by April, so that'll be cool. Other than that, man, just being a dad, working, doing all that stuff. So I appreciate you asking me to come on. I thought it was cool.
Oh, hell,
getting to have this conversation.
Thank
with you.
It was fun. for coming on. I appreciate it. Like I said, I've checked out the podcast. I think the stuff that you guys talk about is fascinating. It's also a very charged subject when you talk about policing. So I feel like whenever you have a chance to talk to someone who actually does that thing on a day-to-day, that helps those topics become less charged, because people are sharing their perspectives that actually do it, instead of seeing it through a filter on media or something like that. So I really appreciate it. And all the stuff that you just mentioned will be linked in the description of the podcast. So you guys should definitely go check that out. And yeah, thanks again. This was a blast. This was really fun.
Awesome. Thanks again, dude. I appreciate it as well. I had fun.